Chapter 772. The sword light was like a raging flood, shattering the world and annihilating all life. The dark star ice serpent's eyes flashed with a cold light. With its strength, how could it be willing to be stabbed 13 times? Since it did this, it had its own reasons. And now, the dark star ice serpent had finally waited for the spirit lizard to attack with its full strength. Now was the time. Kacha! Kacha! On the surface of its body, the ice that had withstood the 13 swords of the spirit lizard and hadn't shown any signs of collapsing began to fall apart. But these pieces of ice didn't fall to the ground. Rather, they were wrapped up by an invisible strength and floated in the air. The dark star ice serpent roared. Pieces of ice flew out to meet the flood of sword light. There were gaps between the pieces of ice, but at this time, there was a translucent blue membrane covering them. Each piece of ice was like a fulcrum, holding up a giant net that wrapped around the endless sword light. The spirit lizard's complexion changed. In the next moment, the blue net fell down, wrapping around it along with all the sword light. Rumble, rumble. There was a deep rumbling sound, like the roar of thunder coming from deep within the thick cumulus clouds. Looking through the translucent blue membrane, besides the wildly erupting sword light, one couldn't see anything else. The entire Limitless Sword sect was deathly silent. Whether it was the supporters or the Limitless Sword sect cultivators, all of them subconsciously widened their eyes, incredulity on their faces. This was a complete suppression in all aspects. There was no room for resistance at all. The Dark Star Ice Serpent actually possessed such terrifying strength. Although the Limitless Sword sect Spirit Lizard was strong, it wasn't on the same level. It had been defeated. At this moment, everyone was enlightened. From this point on, this battle was already over. Or, it was more accurate to say that the result of the arena finals had already been decided. It wasn't just the Limitless Sword sect, but the cultivators of Moonkeep Tower and Radiance Temple, as well as their many supporters, all had similar thoughts in their hearts. Bang! With a loud explosion, pieces of ice and membrane flew out in all directions, revealing the spirit lizard's figure. The Limitless Sword sect robes at war were now torn to shreds, hanging on its body like strips of cloth. On its exposed body, massive scales were broken and wounds of varying depths crisscrossed each other. Because there was still residual sword intent in the wounds, it wasn't able to heal for a time. Blood flowed out from the wounds, constantly dripping onto the ground. Soon, a shallow puddle of blood formed on the ground. The spirit lizard's current condition seemed even worse. Sword Master suddenly stood up. He took a deep breath. Before he could finish his words, he was forced to stop by the spirit lizard's stern gaze. The Sword Master frowned and said slowly, "So be it. The Limitless Sword sect hasn't fallen to the point where you have to risk your life to survive. Moreover, so what if he lost today? There will be a chance in the future to get it back." The spirit lizard shook its head. "I don't have much time left." Swordhead's body stiffened. "Impossible. With your strength, it is easy for you to live for 10,000 years. The spirit lizard had a gentle look in its eyes as it shook its head and said, "I'm just an ordinary lizard beast. I was lucky enough to cultivate with the previous Sword Master, which allowed me to gain spiritual wisdom and step into the Sword Tao. But when I entered the Tao, I was already at the end of an ordinary lizard's life. Being able to live for 5,000 years is already a great fortune. That's why I've taken the initiative to fight in this Beast King battle. Because this will be the last thing I can do for the Sword Sect, and it's also the only way I can repay the Sword Sect. Don't stop me. This battle will be the conclusion of my life. If I can die in battle, that will be the best result for me." The Sword Master gripped his fists, using his powerful will to suppress his trembling hands. He looked at the spirit lizard and said, "All right, I won't stop you." The spirit lizard nodded, "Thank you." It looked back at the Dark Star Ice Serpent. All of its gentleness instantly vanished, leaving behind only a solemn and respectful expression. "You are far stronger than I expected. You do indeed have the qualifications to seize the position of champion of the arena. but I have a reason why I must persist. Even if I know I don't have much of a chance, I must still fight with everything I have. I hope that you will not pity me and allow me to fight you fair and square. Otherwise, you will surely regret it, because I will be using a secret art that will allow me to erupt with an extremely formidable strength for a short period of time." The dark star-eyed serpent's mouth moved. A deep voice came out from its mouth. "I will fulfill your last wish." The spirit lizard smiled. "Good." It raised its sword. Its tattered sword robe was twisted to pieces by an invisible strength. Puff, puff. Massive amounts of blood gushed out from the crisscrossing wounds. In this way, the remnant sword intent was forced out from its body. As the wounds closed, the spirit lizard's aura began to rise at an astonishing rate. The heat in the air rapidly rose, leaving one's mouth parched. At this moment, there wasn't the least bit of light emitting from its body. But the feeling it gave off was that of a blazing sun. Even though they were separated by the arena's barrier of strength, they could still feel the burning heat in the air that could ignite at any moment. The dark star ice serpent's massive body rapidly coiled up. The silver white horn on its head began to shine with runes. The temperature around it crazily fell. Massive icicles spun around it and fell from the sky. The ground rapidly turned a frosty white color. Then, the icicles piled up and thickened, forming a thick layer of frost and snow. The martial field was divided by a line in the middle. Two completely different worlds appeared. One side was like a blazing sun, and the other side was like an eternal night, freezing cold. Tit for tat. With a burning heat and freezing cold met, loud popping sounds constantly rang out. Vast tracts of white fog rose up, but this fog couldn't spread out. As it approached the spirit lizard, it was instantly evaporated. As for the dark star-eyed serpent, it was frozen solid. The atmosphere was heavy to the extreme. Space nearly froze over. Although the battle between the wand phoenix and the moon-worshipping beast was still ongoing, everyone's eyes were drawn towards it. Schwa. Without any warning, the spirit lizard lifted its sword and slashed down. Because it wasn't able to completely control the rising strength within its body, the sword intent leaked outwards, causing a phenomenon to appear. It was like a golden crow had flown out from a great sun. Its wings spread out and swooped down. Wherever it passed, space rapidly twisted, tiny cracks appearing in its wake. Flames appeared out of thin air, causing the image of the golden crow to become even clearer. As it broke into the world of ice, it was like boiling oil being poured into cold water. A violent reaction erupted. There was a grating sound, causing one's scalp to tingle. The falling icicles in the sky suddenly went wild. They rapidly gathered together, forming sharp claws of ice and snow that grasped the golden crow sword light. But the golden crow was too strong. The moment the claws of ice and snow touched it, they melted away. The sword light cut through the dark star, ice serpent like a hot knife through butter. The spirit lizard looked up. It stepped forwards, and its body shot forwards. It raised its sword, and a brilliant sword light erupted, covering its body. Man and sword became one as they shot forwards like an arrow, following the golden crow sword light and recklessly burning flames as they broke into the world of ice and snow. The spirit lizard's secret technique was based on the limitless sword sex taboo technique, fused together with its own talent. After using it, its strength would rise, but it was destined that it wouldn't be able to continue for too long. Thus, the spirit lizard couldn't calmly wait like the dark star-eyed serpent. It had to end this battle in the shortest time possible. Everyone thought that there would be a fierce struggle between tigers and dragons, but this wasn't the case. This was because the spirit lizard had already decided that victory or defeat would be decided in the next breath of time. Either would win by a fluke or would die here and now. Following behind the golden crow, the spirit lizard's eyes were calm. It adjusted its breathing, and the sword intent within its body had been brewed to the peak. What came next would be the strongest sword strike of its life. Pa! The golden crow sword light that rushed forwards, tearing apart the ice barrier and opening a path finally exhausted its strength. It shattered and dissipated, but it had already completed its mission. This was because the dark star ice serpent's figure had appeared in front of the spirit lizard. It was very close, so close that when the spirit lizard attacked, it could erupt with its full strength. So, the spirit lizard lifted its sword and thrust out. At this moment, the world was overshadowed. All that was left over was the sword light that pierced through space. It was so brilliant that one couldn't look straight at it. The air was cut apart. Pitch-black cracks appeared, rapidly spreading forwards, advancing without stopping. The spirit lizard gasped for breath. This sword strike had emptied all the strength in its body. An incomparably weak feeling gushed out, causing its vision to blur. Large swathes of darkness began to appear in its vision. It knew that because it had used a secret technique and crazily erupted with strength, its great limit had arrived ahead of time. But the spirit lizard still kept its eyes wide open, forcing itself to maintain a trace of clarity. It wanted to see with its own eyes the result of the strongest sword strike of its life. The sword light cut towards the dark star ice serpent. The black line that tore through space touched the spirit lizard's body. Then, a rich black light appeared. It was pure and deep, like all the darkness in an endless abyss had been condensed. Like a great maw, the sword light was swallowed up. The darkness tumbled several times before slowly returning to tranquility. It was finished like this. Everyone in the arena who had been stunned by the spirit lizard's sword strike before its death widened their eyes, their faces filled with disbelief. They could clearly feel the formidable strength contained within this sword strike. It was because of this that they were shocked. The darkness scattered, revealing the dark star ice serpent's figure. Its eyes revealed a bit of weariness as it looked down at the fallen spirit lizard. There was a trace of self-deprecation on its face, as well as a bit of gratitude. Before its body fell to the ground, it had already closed its eyes. With one side dead, the result of the battle was decided. The isolating strength of the arena immediately vanished. Shua, the sword master, instantly arrived. He held onto the spirit lizard with both hands, not caring at all about the wounds that flowed with blood because its consciousness had dissipated. He allowed his sword robe to be dyed red. His complexion paled. He looked up at the dark star ice serpent and slowly said, "I thank you on behalf of the spirit lizard." With the strength that the dark star ice serpent had erupted with at the end, if it wanted to, it could have ended the battle before the spirit lizard had even used its sword. The sword master turned and flew back to the platform with the spirit lizard in his arms. "Let's go." Whoosh, whoosh, the sword sect cultivators followed behind him. In the blink of an eye, they were already far away. The cultivators that supported the limitless sword sect were all silent. Even they couldn't say any words of complaint at this time. The spirit lizard had already done its best. It had even paid the price, dying in the arena with what little life it had left. If one had to blame something, they could only blame the dark star ice serpent for being too strong to the point of leaving others in despair. And at this time, the battle between the Phoenix Lawn and the moon-worshipping beast was still continuing. The two formidable spirit beasts were evenly matched. Each minute and every second an intense battle was occurring. But looking at the current situation, it wouldn't be possible to determine victory or defeat in a short period of time. Radiant's Temple Master North Jade furrowed her eyebrows. The Dark Star Ice Serpent was far more powerful than she had imagined. Even if she had made additional preparations, if she continued to fight with the moon-worshipping beast, she feared she wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. At that time, she would be in great trouble. The Moonkeep Tower Master was expressionless. Her ordinary face became increasingly unlikable. She glanced at the hidden Fog Sex platform that was filled with jubilant cheers. A trace of ridicule and pity flashed deep in her eyes. What a pitiful group of people. The Moonkeep Tower Master lowered her head, concealing the gazes of everyone. Her lips moved as she sent a sound transmission. Across from her, the Radiance Temple Master's complexion changed. Her complexion was cloudy and uncertain. After several breaths of time, she nodded. The Moonkeep Tower Master lifted a hand. We admit defeat. Her words were simple and direct, without any explanation. As for the moon-worshipping beast that had been fiercely fighting with the Phoenix Lawn, it didn't resist at all. With a deep roar, it forced back the Phoenix Lawn. Then, it stepped on Moonlight and flew out of the arena, returning to Moonkeep Tower's platform. There was an uproar. In particular, behind Moonkeep Tower, the massive number of cultivators that were supporting them couldn't accept this result. How could you do this? What is involved today isn't just the interests of Moonkeep Tower. If you do this, just what do you think I am? Look at the limitless sword sex spirit lizard. Even if it dies, it will still stand until the end. Now that we are evenly matched, it actually admits defeat. This is going too far. The Moonkeep Tower Master had a calm expression. She lightly said, "The moon-worshipping beast's strength is limited. It cannot compare with the limitless sword sex spirit lizard. If it doesn't admit defeat now, it will be dangerous for it to face the dark star ice serpent." She swept her eyes around. It is indeed Moonkeep Tower's mistake to betray everyone's trust. But we were also forced to do so. I hope that everyone can understand. Moreover, to all of our supporters today, Moonkeep Tower will send a gift to express our apologies. The restless crowd fell silent. That was right. Even the strong spirit lizard had died in battle. So what if the moon-worshipping beast won? With reason and evidence, in addition to Moonkeep Tower's gift, as well as the tyrannical strength of the 7 great sects, everyone chose to give up. Her decision was decisive and effective. On the other side, everyone from Radiant's Temple had green complexions. The Moonkeep Tower Master had clearly stated the situation. She believed that it would be dangerous for the moon-worshipping beast to face the dark star ice serpent. How could the Phoenix Lawn, whose strength was on par with it, have a good ending? The trace of joy that he instinctively felt disappeared in an instant. Bei Qiong's complexion sank. She had inadvertently been played by the Moonkeep Tower Master. Not just that, but she would have to pay a great price in exchange for Moonkeep Tower to admit defeat. Feeling the eyes of the surrounding cultivators, the Radiance Temple Master became increasingly depressed. She took a deep breath and was barely able to suppress her tumbling thoughts. She said in a low voice, "I believe that the Phoenix Lawn will have a chance to win. As long as they won, all distrust and blame would vanish. The price that Radiance Temple had to pay would be doubled." 3 flame figures stood together. The one who spoke was a petite figure. Her voice was filled with innocence and immaturity. "Limitless Lone Mountain, since you and I have gathered together, there is no need to beat around the bush and waste each other's time. Let's get straight to the point. We are all certain that the Chaotic Sky Chronicle cannot be lost. Anyone who tries to interfere with us must die." Limitless darkly said, "Yellow Oriole, since you're going to get straight to the point, speak your mind. Beating around the bush isn't your style." Yellow Oriole looked at Lone Mountain. Lone Mountain said, "As long as I can obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle, I will stop at nothing." "Very good." Yellow Oriole giggled. "That fellow sage's plan is perfect and has a high chance of success. But what we want is a foolproof plan. We cannot allow any mistakes. The Chaotic Sky Chronicle is on that little girl Yun Dai's body, and the only one preventing us from obtaining it is Ningqin. As long as he dies, there is no need to care about the result of the arena." Limitless said, "If we do this, we will violate the Council's agreement. Even if we succeed, we will arouse the dissatisfaction of Sage and the others." Yellow Oriole said, "I will bear all the consequences. Then I have no problems." Lone Mountain smiled. "I also have no problems." Yellow Oriole looked at the two of them. "I don't need to explain what will happen next. You should already be able to guess what will happen. Let's go now. Be careful and don't disturb Sage and the others. I don't want any accidents to occur." The 3 of them turned and walked into the depths of the Dark Hall. As the gathering place of the Dark Parliament, this place wasn't just used for simple meetings. With 3 senators taking action, it was more than enough to mobilize some interesting strength to create a death package for that hindering Mr. Ningqin. Yellow Oriole smiled. Thinking about it, that scene would surely be very interesting. Beast Fighting Arena. The Limitless Sword Sect and Moonkeep Tower had been eliminated one after another. Now, only Radiance Temple and the Hidden Fog Sect were left. Next was the battle for the Beast King. Whoever won would be the last one to laugh and obtain extremely rich rewards. The martial field that had been split in two fused together once more, as if setting off the importance of the Beast King battle. 4 stone statues rose up from the ground around the martial field, each standing in a corner. These 4 stone statues each had their hands outstretched. They looked down at the entire martial field, as if they were referees of this battle. The finals began. There was no time to rest or recover. But this in itself was fair because both sides were receiving the same treatment. If one had used up too much strength to defeat their opponent in the semifinals, causing them to be incomparably weak now, then they could only blame themselves for being too weak or having bad luck. So, when the arena combined into one, the Phoenix Lawn and the Darkstar Ice Serpent faced each other. Their eyes met. A cold chill radiated from them. Hufu struggled to stand up and suppress his desire to cough. His cloudy eyes stared at this scene, his emotions tumbling in waves. After so many years, he had finally waited for this day. As long as the Darkstar Ice Serpent became the Beast King, he would have the chance to break the shackles of the Hidden Fog Sect and complete the mission that had been passed down through the generations of the Sect Master. With Mr. Ningqin here and such a formidable Darkstar Ice Serpent, he could definitely win. He could definitely win. Hufu looked up at the black-robed Qinyu. But this time, the shadow beneath him began to wriggle like a living creature. It rose up and swallowed him whole like a giant mouth. Bang! In the arena, the Phoenix Lawn and Darkstar Ice Serpent's battle erupted. The moment he was plotted against, Qinyu guessed that it was the Dark Parliament that did this. It seemed that they weren't prepared to keep their promise and had directly flipped the table. If this were before, Qinyu might have felt this situation troublesome. But now his heart was calm. Even though his consciousness was wrapped in darkness and was constantly sinking, as if it were about to be sucked into an endless abyss, he didn't panic at all. The reason was simple. He had already found an extremely reliable backer. If so, then being locked onto by the Ancient in the Helmistic realm wasn't a completely bad thing. Qinyu believed that when he was plotted against, the Ancient had already sensed it and would certainly help. There was no reason for this, but this intuition was incomparably strong. The sinking consciousness finally stopped. It stepped onto the hard ground. It was also a deep darkness, flat and smooth, like an incomparably massive mirror. "Welcome, main body." A deep and low voice echoed from all directions, carrying with it a carefree and insolent feeling that came from being released after a long period of repression. Chapter 773. Everything in the world had 2 sides. There was a sun in the sky, so there were shadows that fell upon the earth. They were completely opposed to each other, but they were born from the same source and could not be separated. Perhaps this was the most mysterious aspect of the world's great Tao. The moment Qinyu's eyes met the demonic smiling face on the ground, he instantly knew who it was. It was like an instinct. "You recognize me?" Qinyu's smile became even brighter as he reflected on the ground. He said, "I never thought I would be able to meet with my main body so soon. I really must thank those good people that provided me with extra strength. After I lock you up here and replace you, I should go and properly thank them. For instance, I'll let them die a little more painfully. This can be considered revenge for my main body. So, there is no need for you to feel unwilling. I have been very good to you." Qinyu's eyebrows rose up. He slowly said, "Although this is the first time I've learned of your existence, it is best not to use such inferior psychological attacks. You and I are strictly speaking the same person, and you know all of my experiences. So, you should be well aware that this is useless to me, so why waste our time?" Qinyu's shadow. This should be the most appropriate name. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only a cold and gloomy expression. "My main body, I know all of your experiences, but you might not remember them. You are so incompetent and ignorant. So what qualifications do you have to obtain control of your body and walk between the heavens and earth? Qin Yu frowned. What do you mean? Speak clearly. Ha ha. How pitiful and sad. Even now, you still haven't discovered your missing memories? That's right. I do know those things, but why should I tell you? The shadow laughed hysterically, his face distorted. Qin Yu's complexion was ugly. From the time he was born until the time he was adopted by Ani Gu, his memories were indeed blurry. He originally thought that it was because he was too young and his experiences were too difficult, so he instinctively forgot about them. But now it seemed this wasn't the case. The shadow snapped his fingers. All right, chat time is over. We should get down to business. He spread out his arms, his lips curling up in anticipation. Next, I should leave this place and embrace this evil and unjust world. A black aura gushed out from the ground, invading Qin Yu's feet and spreading upwards. It was like he was wearing a suit of black armor. A cold and gloomy aura crazily seeped into the soul space. The soul opened its eyes. One eye was normal, and the other was pitch black. This was a very strange feeling. His consciousness was being pulled out, but he could clearly feel the changes in his soul, as well as the process of him gradually losing control. Qin Yu helplessly discovered that he didn't have any ability to resist the shadow's attacks. He was completely in a passive position, or rather, he had yet to grasp the method to resist the invasion of the shadows. If this situation continued, barring any accidents, he would definitely not be able to hold on. He was afraid that he would really be replaced, and his consciousness would forever sink into this dark world. Sure enough, everything in this world could be looked at from two different perspectives. What was originally thought to be a disaster or a trouble could actually be a lifesaver at a crucial moment. Qin Yu began to ask the ancient for help. Even if he was confident that the other party had already sensed what he was experiencing, he couldn't gamble on this. In particular, he wasn't sure how long he could last. But soon, Qin Yu's heart turned cold, as if he had fallen into an icy lake. He didn't receive a response from the ancient. Forcing himself to calm down, Qin Yu began to analyze the situation. There were two possibilities. One was that the ancient, for some reason, was unable to sense what he was experiencing right now. Even the connection between them had been cut off, just like what had happened in the time altar. The other possibility was far more terrifying. The ancient already knew everything and had received Qin Yu's distress signal, but he had chosen to ignore it. Qin Yu couldn't determine which situation this was, but he didn't have time to confirm it. The shadow was rapidly eroding his will. The darkness that rose from the ground had already reached his knees. Without thinking too much, Qin Yu summoned the little blue lamp. As for whether or not he was exposed, as well as all sorts of dangers that might appear afterwards, he had to put these things aside in the face of life or death. An even more terrifying matter occurred. Qin Yu could feel the existence of the little blue lamp, but it seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber and didn't respond to his summons. This was far too troublesome. When his consciousness had first been sucked into the darkness and sunk deeper and deeper into the abyss, all of that had now vanished. There was no one that could remain calm and rational in the face of death. If there was, it was absolutely an act, or if there was something wrong with their mind. As for the nonsense that the shadow had said that he would be imprisoned here, Qin Yu didn't believe a single word of it. He inevitably fell into a state of panic. Because of the existence of the little blue lamp, Qin Yu always had an inexplicable confidence. Even in the face of danger and hopeless situations, he was able to calmly deal with them. But now, the little blue lamp seemed to have been stripped away. He could only rely on his own strength to struggle for a chance at survival. Don't panic. Calm down, calm down. Qin Yu closed his eyes and took deep breaths, trying to restore his ability to think. But the shadow wasn't willing to give him this chance. It sneered. Are you desperate? Are you afraid? I know all of your trump cards very well because you are me and I am you. Since I dare to make a move now, that means I have absolute confidence in myself. No one can save you. Believe in me. There is no point in struggling. Staying in this world of darkness isn't death for you, but a kind of deep sleep. Perhaps many years from now, I will awaken you and give you a chance to be reborn. But the premise is that you don't create too much trouble for me. Otherwise, I guarantee you that you will regret it. The shadow's voice became even louder, drilling into Qin Yu's mind. So, make your choice. Give up all resistance and allow me to occupy your body. This is your only way out. Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes, his voice hoarse. If you really had absolute confidence in yourself, you wouldn't have said so much to me. The shadow's voice came to an abrupt stop. It sneered, "If that's what you want to think, then do as you please." Then it closed its mouth. The darkness that extended upwards from the surface of Qin Yu's body became even faster. Qin Yu faintly grasped something. His thoughts raced. As he said, "I have no secrets from you. Then, I should know what you were worried about. The little blue lamp and the ancient consciousness are my two trump cards. Now, they have lost their use, so what you fear isn't them. But if I want to escape, the only thing I can rely on is their strength. So, there should be something that I have that you don't that can be used to draw them out. The little blue lamp can be eliminated. There is no reason for it to choose you and abandon me. Then, there's only one possibility." Qin Yu spoke quickly. His eyes became increasingly bright, like a gambler in a casino who only had one last chance left. If he won, he could take back everything. If he lost, everything would be over. Qin Yu closed his eyes. He did his best to mobilize the strength within his body that he had just touched upon. His consciousness rapidly weakened. Qin Yu could feel a terrifying suction force descending, as if it wanted to tear him apart and swallow him whole. This was because he was trying to use a strength that he didn't have the qualifications to control with his current cultivation. "You are seeking death." The shadow roared. Its corrosive speed increased. Qin Yu didn't care. He endured the terrifying suction force. He had already placed his bet, and there was no turning back. After an unknown period of time, just as Qin Yu felt that his consciousness would fade away at any moment, a strange fluctuation spread out from his body. In the world of darkness, space twisted. But this was only a superficial phenomenon. The true reason was that the flow of time had changed. Although it was only a tiny change, in the eyes of certain existences, it was no different from a lighthouse lighting up in the darkness. Bang! A formidable strength suddenly descended from above. The shadow's angry and unwilling roars echoed in his ears. In the next moment, the world of darkness tumbled and shattered. Arena, hidden fog sex platform. Sitting on the highest stone chair, Qin Yu stuffily coughed. The darkness that wrapped around his body shattered like an eggshell and fell away. Then, countless cries of alarm and alarm spread into his ears from all directions. Mister, are you all right?" Hu Fu's anxious voice echoed out from behind him. Qin Yu gripped the armrest with both hands, barely ensuring that he wouldn't fall over. He slowly shook his head. "I'm fine." Although he said this, he couldn't conceal the weakness in his voice. Hu Fu had an anxious look on his face. He didn't know what had happened. Just a moment ago, the darkness had swallowed up Qin Yu and then shattered and dissipated. From start to finish, it had only been a breath of time. But Qin Yu's current condition was clearly poor. Although the dark star-eyed serpent had displayed a formidable strength, Hu Fu was sure that Qin Yu was the key to the hidden fog sect's final victory. Qin Yu took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Deep within his body, the holy light hidden beneath his bloodline began to circulate on its own, constantly producing strength to supplement his weakened body. The ancient's voice sounded out in his mind. "I know that you're angry about what happened before, but to me, you or your shadow, no matter who controls your body and walks through the world, you are still the true ancient. There is no difference in this. And I believe that your shadow's personality would be more suitable for the great cause of revitalizing the ancient race. But since you have touched upon the path of time, I guarantee you that something like this will never happen again. I will do my best to help you grow as quickly as possible." This was something that couldn't be explained to begin with, so the ancient's words were spoken in a straightforward manner. But the more he spoke like this, the more open and aboveboard it seemed. But to this, Qin Yu only wanted to say, "Go F***CK yourself." On the surface, he could only silently nod in understanding. The ancient's consciousness fell silent. The cracks had already appeared, and both sides were well aware of this. It was just that they were intentionally concealing the current situation. What else could they do? Turn hostile? If they did that, then the one to suffer a loss would be them. Chinyu took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. He looked up towards the arena. The Dark Parliament clearly wanted to flip the table. Even if he won today, would they really give up? Outside the arena, in the camp of cultivators supporting Radiant's temple, a strange light surged in the eyes of Cultivator. As he saw Chinyu be swallowed up by the darkness and then break apart, he clenched his fists in his sleeves and cursed out loud. Bastard! When this matter involved the chaotic Sky Chronicle, the Dark Parliament placed an incomparably high importance on it. Naturally, some great figures would personally come to pay attention to any changes in the situation. This cultivator was nothing more than a puppet being controlled. Things were starting to spiral out of control. Today, this debt would surely be placed on the Dark Parliament's head. There was no possibility of reconciliation between them and Ningqin. Yu's mysterious background and strength likely represented a great deal of trouble. Although the Dark Parliament didn't necessarily fear him with their current strength. If this matter was blown out of proportion, the entire Dark Parliament would be dragged out from the shadows and exposed to the sunlight. This was the greatest problem. In the headquarters of the Dark Congress, in the depths of a dark hall, the tightly shut door suddenly opened, and 3 flaming silhouettes flew out. Bang, bang, bang. With a dull thud, they crashed into the ground. The flames that formed their figures instantly dimmed. Cough, cough, cough. There was a violent cough, accompanied by pained gasps. We actually failed. This is far beyond my expectations. It was Lone Mountain Councilman. His eyes, formed from flames, didn't reveal any panic, but rather excitement. What a madman! Limitless cursed inwardly. His tone became even gloomier. There must be some great secret hidden on Ningqin's body. I fear he will be in trouble. Oriole screamed. How could he possibly block it? The dark strength deep within the headquarters hall required at least 3 councilmen to act together in order to activate it. Over the countless years of inheritance, the Dark Parliament had encountered several crises. But by relying on this hidden card, they had been able to turn misfortune into fortune. Even if one truly stepped into the divine Tao, after being swallowed up by the darkness, they still wouldn't have the strength to fight back. Limitless glanced at her with dissatisfaction. This crazy woman was indeed unreliable. At this time, don't speak such meaningless words. The problem is, what do we do next? At the start, Oriole had guaranteed that if there was a problem, she would bear the consequences alone. Oriole fell silent. After several breaths of time, she said, even if I step forward and take responsibility, do you really think you can completely escape from this? Limitless' tone was icy cold. What do you mean? Oriole lightly said, it's simple. From the moment we chose to act, we became an inseparable whole. She swept her eyes over Limitless and Lone Mountain. But you don't need to worry. This matter was indeed done by the 3 of us, but Ningqin doesn't know of it, so he will blame it on the entire Dark Parliament. If he doesn't have any background, then we won't need to worry at all. Even if he has a great background, when facing the pressure of the outside world, the Dark Parliament must be united. The Sage and the others won't have a chance to cause trouble. Limitless coldly snorted. He had actually been schemed against. This wasn't a good feeling. Lone Mountain coughed twice. I'm actually looking forward to what will happen next. His figure began to fade away. And, to a certain degree, this is also a good thing, right? Ningqin had torn apart all pretense of cordiality with the Dark Parliament. Victory or defeat in the arena finals was no longer important. In other words, even if the Hidden Fog sect won first place, the Dark Parliament could continue to steal the chaotic Sky Chronicle. The battle between the Phoenix Lawn and the Darkstar Ice Serpent reached a white-hot climax. This Radiant's Temple Spirit Beast had hidden its true strength. Moreover, it clearly controlled some arcane skill that could rapidly increase its strength for a short period of time. Facing the Darkstar Ice Serpent's attacks, although it was at a disadvantage, its defense was still watertight. The arena was covered in ice and snow. Strong blue winds roared and wind blades cut through the air, emitting muffled, crackling sounds. The Radiant's temple master grit her teeth in hatred. She had seen everything that had happened to Chinyu's body just now and was able to easily guess that it was those people who had secretly taken action. Unfortunately, they had failed at the last moment and hadn't been able to kill this person, otherwise things would have been much easier. She looked up at the Phoenix Lawn. Although it didn't seem tired at all, Beiqiong was well aware that most of its arcane skill's effect had already passed. It seemed that she could only use the trump card they had given her. Light flashed in her palm, and a translucent black jade card appeared. Beiqiong hesitated for a moment and then crushed it in her fingers. On the arena, the Phoenix Lawn suddenly screeched. Black spots began to appear on the feathers covering its body. Then, like a drop of ink falling into water, they spread out at an astonishing speed, engulfing the Phoenix Lawn's entire body. Tiny blood vessels bulged out because of the rapid increase in blood. This caused the Phoenix Lawn's eyes to turn blood red. Its screams became increasingly urgent, revealing a pained expression. Who? Chapter 774. Heavenly Tribulation. One of the cultivators exclaimed. Many cultivators inside and outside the Colosseum had a drastic change in expression as they looked at the gradually darkening sky with fear in their eyes. Ascension. This is the major heavenly tribulation to break through to the great Tao realm and touch the divine Tao. Hurry up and leave. Don't get caught up in it or we'll die. One by one, the cultivators turned around in a panic, wishing that they had an extra pair of legs as they fled for their lives. These people were cultivators whose cultivation had reached a bottleneck and could trigger the heavenly tribulation at any time. Because they were not confident of transcending it, they forcefully suppressed their cultivation, causing the heavenly tribulation to arrive a little later. Now that they were tempted by the aura of the heavenly tribulation outside, their cultivation was restless. If they did not leave quickly, they would not be able to control whether they wanted to transcend the tribulation or not. That would truly be tearless. As they ran out, they gritted their teeth. Who didn't prepare over and over again to transcend the tribulation and consider all aspects? Then they would invite their good friends, teachers, and seniors to watch over them in case of any accidents. Who would transcend the tribulation just like that? It was simply unreasonable. After running for more than 5 kilometers, they felt the restless cultivation in their bodies gradually calm down. Only then did the fleeing cultivators heave a sigh of relief. I'm so lucky. I finally escaped. At this time, in the pitch-black sky, the tribulation clouds had already finished brewing. With a deafening roar, tribulation lightning descended like a waterfall. There were so many of them that it was like a rainstorm. Lightning filled the entire field of vision, making it impossible to see the situation below clearly. Such a heavenly tribulation was clearly not normal. Most of the people present were people with high cultivation and had dealt with major tribulations more than once or twice. They were extremely experienced. Ordinary heavenly tribulations were weak to strong. Moreover, the number of tribulation lightning was limited. Basically, one would fall after another. This was the first time many people had seen a heavenly tribulation like this. However, they did not have to be puzzled for too long before their questions were answered. Demonic tribulation. This Phoenix Lawn is possessed. The cultivator who roared was a white-haired old man with 2 young men behind him. At this moment, he turned around and flicked his sleeves, sweeping the 2 of them away. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the heavenly tribulation with fear. Demonic tribulation was a kind of heavenly tribulation. It was especially used to descend upon demonic beings. Its power was terrifying, and its goal was not to test one's cultivation, but to kill them. Demonic beings were hated by the heavens and earth. They would be bombarded by thousands of tribulation lightning until their bodies and souls were extinguished. But if they were the heavenly tribulation, then their bodies and souls would be destroyed. In this world, there had once been a terrifying existence that had resisted the demonic tribulation. His mind had been invaded by killing intent, and he had turned into a monster that only knew how to kill and destroy. Thus, a reign of terror had arisen. Phoenix Lawn, cultivator of the lawn spirits, and the lawn tribulation cultivators would have been killed. He heaved. He, Tao, the lawn dove, and the heaved the cultivators, died. Originally, this was something that only existed in various records, yet now was happening right before their eyes. How could the cultivators here not be terrified? If this Phoenix Lawn was killed by the demonic tribulation, then it would be fine. However, if it survived, then all of them would suffer greatly. They might even be killed and devoured. After the panic passed, countless eyes glared at Radiant's temple. Although this was a group of beautiful and pleasing women, no one cared about their demeanor right now. Does Radiant Light Temple not know that this Phoenix Lawn is a demonic cultivator? Anyone found to be demonic, regardless of their status or identity, must be killed on the spot. This is an iron law recognized by the world, yet you dare to openly violate it? If this Phoenix Lawn causes a calamity, then Radiant Light Temple's crimes cannot be forgiven. The group of beautiful women paled. Even they didn't know that the Phoenix Lawn would be possessed by the demonic Tao. Looking at Beiqiong's calm face, it was clear she knew all of this. The women could no longer suppress their anger. Sectmaster, what is going on? You must give an explanation. If this matter is not handled properly, then the 100,000-year foundation of my Radiant Light Temple will be destroyed. The Radiant Light Temple Master lifted a hand to stop them from asking any more questions. She looked around and said, "Everyone, please rest assured that this Phoenix Lawn has not been possessed by the demonic Tao. Rather, it is because the bloodline of the abyss flows within it. Thus it has triggered heavenly tribulation similar to the demonic tribulation. Even if it succeeds in crossing this tribulation, it will not become a killing monster. I can guarantee this. Everyone, please do not panic." The Moonkeep Tower Master lightly said, "It is not the demonic tribulation. Fellow Taoists, there is no need to panic." The two sect masters guaranteed this at the same time. The chaotic and turbulent situation gradually calmed down. But looking at the crazy bolts of tribulation thunder that came crashing down, everyone couldn't help but feel their hairs stand on end. Could this Phoenix Lawn really withstand it? Would it be struck to death on the spot? If so, then the Hidden Fog sect would have picked up a great bargain. Otherwise, according to this momentum, once the Phoenix Lawn successfully crossed tribulation, its strength would likely rise dramatically. At that time, it would be hard to say just who would be the final victor. Hu Fu and the others revealed looks of joy and anticipation. No matter how they obtained it, the leader was the leader. Moreover, the Dark Star Ice Serpent had already displayed enough qualifications to contend for the position of Beast King. It didn't fear being laughed at by others. Just a bit more ruthless, beat it to death. At this moment, all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators were cheering for the heavenly tribulation. On the stone chair in front of them, as the holy light replenished him, Qin Yu gradually recovered. He looked at the Phoenix Lawn submerged in lightning and shook his head inwardly. Those from the Hidden Fog sect were likely celebrating too early. He could faintly feel that although the Phoenix Lawn's aura had been weakened by the heavenly tribulation, it didn't show any signs of decline. Rather, it became even more tenacious, as if it were about to erupt. Without accident, this terrifying heavenly tribulation wouldn't be able to take the Phoenix Lawn's life. But in fact, Qin Yu was only half correct. Not only would this heavenly tribulation not take the Phoenix Lawn's life, but would instead be used by it, becoming a horrifying attack method. When the heavenly tribulation arrived, the Dark Star Ice Serpent vigilantly retreated far away. But now a look of shock flashed in its eyes. It opened its mouth and spat out a breath of cold air that froze the void. In the next moment, a bolt of thunder arrived. With loud cracking sounds, cracks appeared in the frozen void. It had almost been broken. Then, without giving the Dark Star Ice Serpent any time to react, more tribulation thunder roared towards it. Wrapped in blinding lightning, the phoenix one burned with black flames. Its feathers were damaged in many places, and its flesh and blood had been destroyed by the flames and tribulation thunder. There were even some places where its bones were revealed. At this time, the Phoenix One no longer had its previous proud and elegant appearance. It was like an undead spirit that came from the yellow springs of hell. But its eyes were calm, without the slightest hint of pain. Its eyes locked onto the dark star ice serpent as it constantly flapped its wings. It was unknown what method the Phoenix One had used, but it was actually able to guide the aura of the tribulation thunder, causing it to instantly change directions and bombard the dark star ice serpent. This scene immediately aroused cries of alarm. All of the worries that the Phoenix One had fallen to the demonic path had completely vanished. Those that had fallen to the demonic path had lost their minds and only knew how to rely on their instincts to kill. How could they possibly control tribulation thunder to bombard their opponents? What followed was all sorts of incredulity. Tribulation thunder was a test of heavenly tribulation. It was aimed at the person crossing the tribulation. Unless they were sucked into the heavenly tribulation, they wouldn't implicate anyone else. This Phoenix One of Radiance Temple could actually use tribulation thunder to attack its enemies. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. The abyssal bloodline within this Phoenix One isn't ordinary. I fear it's an Overlord-level bloodline, or even an Abyssal Master-level bloodline. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to have such an ability. It looks like this heavenly tribulation won't be able to affect it at all. Once it smoothly passes it, the Phoenix One's strength will surely rise. The Hidden Fog sect rejoice for nothing. It's hard to say just who will be the champion. Chapter 775. Suddenly, the Phoenix One reared its head back and cried out into the heavens. The black flames that wrapped around its body rose over 10 times over. The pitch-black tribulation clouds in the sky seemed to be stimulated by something. They expanded at an astonishing speed, instantly covering the entire Marshall field. The tribulation thunder increased in number and fell even faster. And most importantly, the tribulation clouds clearly regarded the dark star ice serpent as part of its tribulation. Massive amounts of tribulation thunder instantly covered it. Roar! With a deep roar, the silver horn on the dark star ice serpent's head began to shine with light. A layer of ice rapidly condensed from nothingness. Its entire body was pitch black, nearly the same color as the tribulation clouds. Countless tribulation thunder smashed into the black ice. It was like a black hole, easily swallowing up all of the tribulation thunder. As long as it struck the ice, it would instantly vanish from sight. Black flames raged and burned. Even the brilliant lightning was unable to completely cover it. It pierced through the blockade of tribulation thunder and appeared in front of everyone's eyes. But as these flames burned, they didn't emit the least bit of heat. Instead, they emitted an icy chill that penetrated deep into the soul. This sort of chill was different from the dark star ice serpent's strength. It directly affected the soul and consciousness, causing one's thoughts to become incomparably slow. A manifestation of strength that targets the consciousness. A beautiful elder of Radiance Temple shouted out. She looked towards North Cheong, a complex look in her eyes. Thinking about it, the Temple Master must have already known that the Phoenix One could erupt with such strength. Thus she was so confident and persistent. If the Phoenix One could really win and seize the position of champion for Radiance Temple, then her prestige within the sect would reach an unprecedented peak. No one would be able to shake the Temple Master's position again. Thinking about their previous attitude, the eyes of the elders flashed. They began to consider just what sort of price they would have to pay in exchange for the Temple Master's forgiveness. The reason why the Radiance Temple elders would have such a great change in mood was simple. A manifestation of strength that targeted the consciousness was a formidable ability that only a formidable existence that had truly touched upon the divine Tao could possess. The black flames around the phoenix lawn were far from being able to freeze the soul with a single thought of the divine Tao. Even though it was far from being able to imprison all strength, it was still extremely terrifying. As for the dark star ice serpent, although it had displayed a formidable strength before, when compared to the eruption of the phoenix lawn, it had become overshadowed. Rumble. A seemingly endless amount of tribulation, lightning, descended in a frenzy. During this process, the phoenix lawn's aura became stronger and stronger. Finally, when its aura reached its peak, as it fiercely flapped its wings, a black gale suddenly appeared. It spiraled around like a black stone pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. It brazenly charged into the tribulation cloud, directly mincing and dispersing it. The heavenly tribulation had been dispersed. This was another scene that could only appear in legends. While everyone was sucking in a breath of cold air or exclaiming in shock, the raging lightning quickly dissipated under the burning of the black flames. Feng Wan's current appearance appeared in front of everyone. Even though a large number of feathers on its body had been burnt to ashes, revealing a bloody mess of flesh and even pale white bones at this moment, under the phoenix lawn's aura that was so powerful that it caused one's heart to palpitate, no one thought that it was in a sorry state at all. There was only endless majesty and disdain. It was like an undead monarch that had broken free from its shackles and emerged from the depths of hell. If it weren't for the fact that the phoenix lawn's eyes were clear and there weren't any signs of it going berserk, most of the cultivators inside and outside the arena would have already fled in panic. At the same time, the dark star ice serpent that was hiding beneath the black ice also revealed itself. Compared to the phoenix lawn that directly faced the tribulation lightning and dispersed the heavenly tribulation, the dark star ice serpent's actions inevitably gave off a feeling of cowardice and fear. At this moment, even the hidden fog sect cultivators' confidence in the dark star ice serpent began to waver. All of them revealed worried expressions. For countless years, the 7 great sects had dominated the Eastern Plains. The Beast King battles of Dragon City's arena had been held countless times. But there had never been a time when the level of brilliance and the strength of the participating spirit beasts could compare with this Beast King battle. Why did the hidden fog sect finally manage to produce a dark star ice serpent? So why did Radiance Temple have such a strong phoenix lawn? This was the resentment in the hearts of all the hidden fog sect cultivators. Hufu gasped for breath. His withered chest heaved up and down like broken bellows. He rubbed his cloudy eyes and nervously looked at the black-robed figure in front of him. Qinyu didn't turn his head, so Hufu couldn't see his expression. But his motionless body and his straight back made him seem like a towering mountain that could lift up a mountain. He made one feel at ease and trust in him. Hufu relaxed. As long as Mr. could stabilize himself, there was still a chance. The Dark Star Ice Serpent was personally raised by him, and he had even pulled it back from the brink of death twice. He was well aware of its strength. Don't worry, the Dark Star Ice Serpent will definitely win. We will not lose. The old and hoarse voice was filled with firmness. Everyone looked at Hufu and then at Qinyu. Unconsciously, most of the panic in their hearts dissipated and they calmed down. That's right. Even if Radiance Temple's Phoenix Lawn was fierce, they still had Mr. After experiencing all sorts of accidents, the hidden fog sect cultivators were like Yin Dai. They had a nearly blind confidence in Qinyu. On the platform, the changing complexions of the hidden fog sect cultivators couldn't escape the eyes of the surrounding cultivators. All of them revealed looks of surprise. Just who was this mysterious black-robed man that the hidden fog sect cultivators trusted him so much? Even in this situation, he was able to calm the hearts of the people. Did he have some hidden card in his hand? However, the finals of the Beast King battle had already begun. Before the victor was decided, the Beast Fighting Coliseum's power isolated the outside world. Even if he had any tricks up his sleeve, he would not be able to use them. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! Cracks rapidly appeared on the surface of the Dark Star Ice Serpent's black ice. Then, pieces of ice fell to the ground. As they collided with the stone floor, they emitted a clear sound, as if gold and jade were striking each other. It coiled up its body and raised its head high. Its huge eyes stared at the phoenix lawn that was flying in the sky with an icy coldness. Before the finals began, the Darkstar Ice Serpent believed that with its strength, it could easily seize the position of champion. It never imagined that it would fall into such a distressed situation. This caused the Darkstar Ice Serpent's original plan to put on a good performance, so that Mr. Lin would look favorably upon it to fall through. It was enraged to the extreme. Roar! It roared and opened its mouth. A ball of white air formed in its mouth and spat it forward. Hum! Hum! The black ice fragments on the ground trembled and buzzed as the ball of air formed. At this time, they flew up, exploding with the Darkstar. The air was frozen by the absolute low temperature. Visible white marks appeared in the air. The black ice fragments howled along these white marks, as if they were blocks of ice rapidly flowing through a white river. At this time, all the cultivators who were watching this felt their hearts tremble. In that instant, it was like the stars had shifted. It was like they were standing next to a giant ice river, roaring through the void. Because of the fierce impact, the river water had turned deathly white, causing the black ice blocks floating on its surface to become even more striking. The white river was like a dragon, and the black ice was like armor. At this time, as the river rose up, the water scattered in all directions, turning into the head of a giant dragon. It opened its mouth, and one could clearly see the sharp fangs within as it ruthlessly bit forwards. Ah! Countless cultivators cried out in alarm. They staggered backwards. Then, sweat poured down their bodies, soaking their backs. Just now, they had felt that the ice river that had transformed into a giant ice dragon was coming straight at them. A terrifying aura pierced straight into their hearts. Its terrifying might cause their souls to tremble, making it impossible for them to even think of resisting. They could only stretch out their necks and wait for death. As they cried out in alarm, everyone woke up. The ice river and the giant dragon in front of them had all vanished. It was only then that they realized they had fallen into an illusion due to the pull of strength. No, to be more accurate, this wasn't an illusion, but the true meaning of the Darkstar Ice Serpent's attack. Although it seemed like an ordinary breath attack, the truth was that it contained the strength of an ice river that could transform into a giant dragon. Everyone's faces flushed red, but before their embarrassment could disperse, they were interrupted by what happened next. They opened their mouths and felt shock in their hearts. When the ice river attack arrived, the Phoenix Lawn could clearly feel the terrifying strength contained beneath its common-looking appearance. A dignified light flashed in the depths of its incomparably calm blood-red eyes. The Phoenix Lawn spread its wings and black flames rose up. It slammed down, causing a heaven-shaking explosion. The black tornado that had scattered heavenly tribulation appeared once more. Everyone that had just escaped from the true meaning of strength was shaken as they were dragged back in. In the void, in front of the giant dragon formed from the boundless ice river, there was an incomparably massive black stone staff. Its surface was extremely rough, and it was wrapped in black flames. At this time, the stone staff rose up and smashed down with the momentum of a thunderbolt. The ice river dragon flew forwards, the horns on its head shining with a cold light. Bang! The flaming black stone staff collided with the ice river dragon. Terrifying fluctuations of strength erupted, sweeping out in all directions like a hurricane, forming shockwaves visible to the naked eye. The shockwaves continued without end, like raging waves. And at the center of the collision, the black stone staff and the ice river dragon simultaneously disintegrated. As they disintegrated, a terrifying strength erupted once more, causing the already astonishing energy shockwaves to instantly increase by 10 times, 100 times. This feeling was like a monstrous tsunami that blotted out the skies, crashing down with a loud rumble. As for the cultivators that witnessed this collision, they felt as if they were standing beneath a tsunami. Bang! With a loud explosion, the Dark Star Ice Serpent was forced backwards. Its sharp claws pierced into the ground, leaving behind deep claw marks. Across from it, the Lawn Phoenix also flew backwards. The black flames around its body paused for a moment before igniting once more. Puff, puff. Within the arena, amongst the cultivators from Radiance Temple, Moonkeep Tower, and Hidden Fog Sect, as well as the many spectating cultivators, those with weaker cultivations or weaker wills directly fell unconscious to the ground. Blood seeped out from their orifices. As for those that remained standing, besides a few with deep cultivations, most of them paled, fear in their eyes. In that strike just now, the two true meanings of annihilation had shaken their minds. If they couldn't overcome the fear in their hearts, it would leave behind an indelible shadow in their hearts that would affect their future cultivation. And all of this had occurred under the premise that the arena had isolated the majority of the strength of the two spirit beasts. If they were to fight without reservation, then the number of people inside and outside the arena that would be able to protect themselves could be counted on two hands. As everyone thought of this, they couldn't help but reveal looks of horror and alarm. Since the start of the Beast King War, countless years ago, this was the first time that the spectating cultivators had been injured on such a large scale. Chapter 776. Chinyu narrowed his eyes. This Phoenix Lawn's strength wasn't normal. It was overdrawing its own life force. This should be related to the Dark Parliament. Had they prepared for both scenarios? As he thought about how he had almost been swallowed and replaced by the shadow, a cold light flashed in Chinyu's eyes. He turned and ordered, "Those with insufficient cultivation, immediately leave the arena." Chinyu had never underestimated the Dark Parliament's strength. Since they had chosen to use Radiance Temple's Phoenix Lawn as a chess piece to stop the Hidden Fog Sect from winning, they must have a certain degree of confidence in themselves. The Dark Star Ice Serpent still had strength left over, and the Phoenix Lawn should also be holding back. At this level of battle, it was far from reaching its peak. If they didn't leave now, they feared they would be dragged out of the arena. Hufu didn't doubt Chinyu's judgment at all. He said, "Those with a cultivation below a tribulation immortal, immediately leave." Everyone had seen what happened just now with their own eyes, so they didn't refuse this order at all. The group respectfully bowed and quickly left with the unconscious cultivators of their sections. Radiance Temple and Moonkeep Tower also ordered the weaker cultivators of their sects to leave at nearly the same time. The actions of the three sects frightened many of the spectating cultivators. After a brief moment of hesitation, they all stood up and left. Soon, the entire arena was empty. Now, the only ones left were the masters of the three sects and the cultivators that believed they could resist this attack. Chinyu swept his eyes over them. Many of these people had their hearts set on a fluke. He feared they would suffer a bit later, so he naturally wouldn't warn them. And at this time, a new change occurred on the arena. After blocking the Dark Star Ice Serpent's attack, the Phoenix Lawn chose to take the initiative to attack. With a loud cry, its wings rapidly flapped and a black tornado appeared. It rumbled as it spun, connecting the heavens and earth. Although its aura was astonishing, this was the third time the Phoenix Lawn had used this move. Many cultivators frowned. Over and over again, this Phoenix Lawn of Radiance Temple shouldn't only have this method, right? The Dark Star Ice Serpent had already seen this attack twice and was likely prepared for it. Attacking like this was meaningless. But at this time, another change occurred. In the space next to the Black Wind Pillar, another wind pillar appeared. The rumbling sound suddenly rose. However, this was not the end. It was just the beginning. Wind pillars appeared one after another, and in the blink of an eye, there were 9 of them. Every single one of them was connected to the heavens and the earth, and had the power to mince the heavenly tribulation. The tribulation clouds were in a state where they were about to dissipate after expending most of their energy to send down the tribulation lightning and perish together with the glacier colossal dragon. Now that the 9 of them were gathered together, the superposition and amplification of their power was not the sum of the 9 wind pillars, but but a multiplicative one. At this moment, inside and outside the Colosseum, and even the entire Dragon City, there was only the roaring of the 9 wind pillars. There was no other sound. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Feng Yuan, who was wrapped in black flames, floating in the air between the 9 wind pillars. Fear appeared in their eyes, and all the guesses and suspicions they had before completely disappeared. Even if Feng Yuan really only knew how to summon wind pillars, at this level, it already had the power to crush everything. So what if you can change into 1,000 different forms? In the cultivation world, absolute power was the only standard to determine the strong and the weak. The black flames on Feng Yuan's body burned more and more fiercely. The blood-red color in its eyes became even richer, as if it would flow out at any moment. It turned its head and looked at where Radiant's temple was. A gentle light flashed in its blood-red eyes before turning into determination. Bei Qiong was expressionless, as if she hadn't felt the gaze that fell on her face just now. Her aura didn't change at all. Since she had chosen to insist on her own opinion and forcefully suppress the opposition of the elders, she was already prepared to sacrifice Feng Yuan. Although being liked by a monster beast could set off her beauty, the truth was that Bei Qiong didn't like it in her heart. But in order to control Feng Yuan, she had disguised herself well all these years. But just because her acting skills were good didn't mean that she wouldn't feel tired and annoyed. Thus, she could take advantage of this opportunity to completely rid herself of Feng Yuan's entanglement and consolidate her position in Radiant's temple. This was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, it wasn't time for the curtain to fall yet. There was still one last scene that needed to be played out. As Feng Yuan was about to look away, Bei Qiong's lips moved. Her hands within her sleeves trembled imperceptibly. But Feng Yuan saw this, so it let out a cry filled with joy and excitement. It seemed as if this certain death situation wasn't anything at all. Turning to look at the dark star-eyed serpent, Feng Yuan closed its eyes. Black flames crazily rose up all over its body, completely submerging it. In truth, I know that you don't like me and that you've been perfunctory all these years. But that doesn't change the fact that I like your heart. I have tried for a long time to obtain your approval, but in the end I have gained nothing. Instead, I have become even more disgusted. So, since you want to get rid of me, then I will fulfill your wish. This will also be the last time I will help you, so that you can live comfortably in the future. But I still hope that my death today will leave behind the tiniest trace in your heart. If so, then I will be satisfied. 9 columns of wind swallowed Feng Yuan as the black flames rose up. With loud rumbling sounds, they began to move. The stones on the ground were easily plowed away, leaving behind incomparably large ravines in the arena. As they approached each other, the rapidly spinning black winds didn't collide with each other. Instead, they seemed to fuse together. As this fusion appeared, the skies above Dragon City, everywhere one could see, everything turned blood red. It was deep and bright, as if 1,000,000,000,000 lives had just been slaughtered, their blood had been sucked out, and then poured down to dye the skies red. A deep roar sounded out in everyone's hearts. It was impossible to describe just what sort of sound this was. It seemed to contain all the chaos, destruction, and slaughter in the world. Then, in the blood-red skies, the face of a giant rose up, as if it were overlooking the world. The moment everyone saw this face, their minds shook. Then, they fell into panic and fear, as if they were on the edge of death and would be torn to pieces in the next moment. In the arena, a look of pleasant surprise flashed in the eyes of the puppet cultivator of the Dark Parliament who was watching the battle. He never thought that the abyss bloodline flowing in this Phoenix Yuan's body would be even more powerful than he had imagined. It had actually summoned such a shocking existence. He had won, even if this was only a projection, even if it only had the strength to casually strike out, even if its strength would be weakened 100 times over after crossing worlds, it would still be easy to kill the Dark Star-Eye Serpent. The only pity was that after this summoning, the Feng Yuan's life would come to an end. If he knew that it had such a formidable bloodline, he would have made more preparations and at least left it alive. The Dark Parliament had always been interested in this sort of life form with such a formidable bloodline. But now, it was already too late. The puppet cultivator secretly sighed with regret. But as he thought about how the Dark Parliament would be able to obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle after today, his mood brightened. As for the previous assassination attempt, yes, it was indeed done by the Dark Parliament, but where was the evidence? Even if Ning Qin insisted on the Dark Parliament, as long as he couldn't produce any evidence, he would have to hand over that female disciple after he failed. No one could renege on a deal with the Dark Parliament, no matter who it was. Of this, he was confident. On the hidden Fog Sex platform, Qin frowned. He originally thought that he had placed enough importance on the Dark Parliament, but he never imagined that they would give him such a great surprise. If this was the case, then why would they take the unnecessary step of secretly plotting against him? Then, there was only one explanation. The current change was something that the Dark Parliament never expected. Was this an unplanned surprise? Qin bitterly smiled. Although the Dark Parliament had flipped the table, that didn't mean that the result of the Beast King War wasn't important. Only by obtaining victory could they take the initiative and force the Dark Parliament to give up. If they failed, Qin could guarantee that with the Dark Parliament style, they would never admit to the assassination attempt. But in this current situation, it was nearly impossible for them to obtain victory. That blood-red face in the skies. Although Qin didn't know its origins, he could clearly feel the terrifying strength it possessed. After being raised by him, the Dark Star Ice Serpent had undergone a complete rebirth. Its strength far surpassed the strongest ancestor recorded in the hidden Fog Sex records. But even so, facing that blood-red face, Qin couldn't find any chance of victory. It could be said that this was a hopeless situation. But to be more precise, from Qin point of view, this was a situation that couldn't be resolved. In other words, there was someone who could resolve this, for instance, the one who had constructed Dragon City and this arena. Sometimes, taking the initiative to ask for help from others was an effective method to repair relations and ease the atmosphere. Moreover, Qin believed that if he asked for help now, the ancient absolutely wouldn't refuse. Taking a deep breath, Qin closed his eyes beneath the black robes and sent out his request. Soon, the ancient replied. He really did have a way. Hu Fu's body trembled. Despair filled his turbid eyes. Could it be that the heavens had decided that the hidden Fog Sect would be destroyed? In such a situation, facing such a terrifying blood-red face, no matter how much confidence he had in Qin, it still collapsed. This was because this was a strength that surpassed the limits of his imagination. Mr. Qin was fierce, but he was only a single person, not an omnipotent divine god. The atmosphere was stifling. All of the hidden Fog Sect cultivators fell into a deep unwillingness and helplessness. They were so close to becoming the leader, so close that they were only a step away. But this step was a moat that they would never be able to cross. At this time, Qin suddenly stood up from the high stone chair in the front. He spread out his arms as if he were embracing the entire arena. Hu Fu and the others from the hidden Fog Sect subconsciously widened their eyes. They were like drowning people who had grasped onto their last hope. Bei Qian took a deep breath and suppressed the annoyance in her heart. If she knew that the Phoenix Luan bloodline was so powerful, then perhaps, but there were no maybes in this world. With things having come this far, there was no turning back. She looked at Qin and sneered inwardly. At this time, he still didn't despair and give up. His temperament was quite tenacious. But this was useless. Today's outcome was already decided. The Moonkeep Tower Master turned her gaze from the blood-red face and then looked back at the hidden Fog Sex platform. That look of pity and ridicule appeared once more. A bunch of lowly ants actually tried to change their destiny. They were doomed to fail. Chapter 777. Closing his eyes, Qin focused his mind into a single point. With his highly concentrated mental strength, his senses became incomparably sharp. According to the method that the ancient told him, the strength hidden deep within the arena was like a reef hidden beneath the sea, slowly rising to the surface. Roar! A loud roar spread into Chinyu's mind. His field of vision changed. Buried deep underground, in a towering underground palace, a simple blue altar emitted a faint halo of light. Countless runes flowed on its surface and then spread out in all directions, covering every inch of the underground palace. The function of these runes was to isolate and imprison. Their target was the slumbering great dragon atop the altar. Its body was so massive that even though it was coiled up, it still occupied the entire altar. At first glance, all that could be seen were black scales, like protruding rocks. At this time, the great dragon's eyes opened. With loud, cracking sounds, the dragon's scales rubbed against each other. It stretched out its body and raised its massive head. Its deep blue eyes were like a boundless sea. As it stared at Chinyu, it seemed as if it wanted to completely submerge him. If it weren't for the fact that the ancient had already told him about this great dragon's background, Chinyu wouldn't have been able to see that it was only a powerful dragon soul. It simply didn't have its own body. In order to condense a body that was completely the same as reality, this great dragon's soul strength had surpassed the limits of Chinyu's understanding. As the great dragon's eyes locked onto him, Chinyu felt as if he were carrying a mountain on his back. He felt as if he would explode from the pressure, and he couldn't move at all. Without daring to delay, he immediately released the aura of the ancient in his body. The great dragon atop the altar revealed a trace of excitement. For countless years, my long slumber nearly caused me to lose all sense of time. But now, you have finally arrived, the clansman that my master determined would come. The great dragon's deep and low voice echoed through the underground palace, rumbling like thunderclaps. The suppression that Chinyu withstood instantly faded away. He took a deep breath and said, "Now, I need your help." The great dragon looked down at him. "Although your body is stained with my master's aura, in order for me to help you, I need my master's mark." Chinyu lifted his hand and spread out his fingers. A dragon claw mark that had shrunk countless times appeared on his palm, shining with a faint halo. The dragon nodded. "This is the mark of my master. You have the power to temporarily open the altar. Tell me what you need to do." Beast Fighting Arena. Standing high above, Chinyu's eyes flashed open. He slowly lifted his arms, his speed slow, as if he were carrying 1,000 caddies of pressure. At this moment, his actions attracted everyone's attention. The dragon soul didn't care about the dark star-ice serpent. If it weren't for Chinyu informing it ahead of time, then it could have directly seized its body. There would have been no need to go through so much trouble and divide its attention to protect the dark star-ice serpent's weak soul. Because of the existence of the arena's strength, Chinyu couldn't secretly send a sound transmission. Thus, everyone could clearly hear his words. But what do these words mean? Without giving anyone much time to think or be surprised, there was a loud explosion from beneath the arena, as if something had detonated. The entire arena violently shook. Kacha, kacha, the incomparably hard stones of the arena began to crack apart. In the blink of an eye, countless cracks appeared in the ground, each one pitch black. Roar! With a dragon's roar, the phantom of a great dragon flew out from the cracks. The dragon, might of the dragon race, naturally spread out. Everyone felt their chests tighten and their faces paled. Great dragon! Countless cultivators cried out in alarm. It had to be known that in this world, besides a small number of ancient texts that had records of the dragon race, it was as if they had never appeared before. But now, a true great dragon had flown out from beneath Dragon City's arena. Even if it was only a soul form and didn't have a mortal body of its own, it was still a great dragon that existed in legends. There was no doubt about this. After roaring, the great dragon soul form swept its eyes over the audience. Wherever it looked, everyone subconsciously lowered their heads. That deep blue dragon's eyes contained a formidable soul suppression, making it so that no one dared to look straight at it. Its eyes paused on Shinyu for a moment. In the next moment, the great dragon swooped down. Its target was the dark star ice serpent that was curled up into a ball and shivering on the ground. With its strength, it shouldn't have been so weak. But coincidentally, the dark star ice serpents that the hidden fog sect raised had a faint dragon bloodline within them. This was also the reason why they had sharp claws growing out from their abdomens. As for the dragon soul on the underground altar, it was more accurate to say that it was a man-made product. It was refined from the soul fragments of countless great dragons, and after a series of mutations, its soul level had reached a level comparable to that of the primogenitor of the dragon race. The Darkstar Ice Serpent withstood an absolute suppression on the soul level. For it to maintain its consciousness and not fall unconscious was already a testament to its firm will. Surprise flashed in the dragon's soul's eyes. It never thought that a monster beast with an extremely thin dragon race bloodline would be able to maintain its consciousness beneath the pressure of its soul. It seemed that this monster beast wasn't completely useless. The dragon soul was a bit more satisfied with the Darkstar Ice Serpent and decided to give it some benefits. Although it couldn't be considered a descendant of the dragon race, if it became a bit stronger, it should be able to help its master with some minor matters. The dragon soul was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it arrived beside the Darkstar Ice Serpent. Without pausing, it fused into its body. The Darkstar Ice Serpent's giant body suddenly straightened. It raised its head high, pain in its eyes. In the next moment, the black scales covering its body began to break apart, revealing the damaged flesh and blood underneath. At the same time, within the Darkstar Ice Serpent's body, there was a loud crackling sound of bones and muscles breaking. The sounds of growth and growth erupted one after another. The dragon soul was transforming its mortal body, bringing it closer to a dragon's body so that it could display its true strength. Roar, roar. The Darkstar Ice Serpent roared out in pain. Large amounts of blood sprinkled onto the ground, soon dyeing the ground red. Beneath the sharp claws, large claw marks appeared on the stone. During this process, the Darkstar Ice Serpent's body began to grow at a visible speed. The cracked flesh and blood rapidly regenerated and new scales grew out. During this transformation, the dragon soul was even more satisfied with the Darkstar Ice Serpent. This monster beast's mortal body quality was much better than it had imagined. It could save a great deal of strength. If so, then it might be able to give a lucky chance. As the dragon soul's thoughts changed, the Darkstar Ice Serpent underwent a new transformation. The flesh and blood on its head rapidly bulged out. The Darkstar Ice Serpent's pain seemed to increase by several times. Its massive body tumbled about on the ground, but its eyes were filled with endless joy. After the initial panic, the Darkstar Ice Serpent sensed that its mortal body was rapidly becoming stronger. And now, what the dragon soul was doing was directly increasing the level of its bloodline. Once it grew a second horn, it would become the incarnation of a flood dragon and become a close relative of the dragon race. It would even be able to cultivate and strengthen its dragon race bloodline until it finally transformed into a true great dragon. But this sort of bloodline increase, especially when the dragon soul used such a crude and direct method, the pain was directly proportional to the harvests. Even though it knew that this was a good thing, the Darkstar Ice Serpent nearly collapsed and retreated several times. Just as it felt that it could no longer withstand it, the heart-rending pain receded like a tide. The dragon soul's voice sounded out. "Little fellow, leave everything else to me." In the next moment, it took control of its mortal body. Schwa, its eyes opened, rapidly turning a deep blue. Chapter 778. Its giant tail slammed down. The Darkstar Ice Serpent was like an arrow released from a bow, soaring into the heavens as it hurtled towards the blood-red face, its momentum like a rainbow. The imprisonment of the arena was easily broken apart. As the Darkstar ice serpent soared into the skies, the trillions of spiritual strength in the world began to boil. Like rivers returning to the sea, they gathered from all directions, crazily revolving around it. The phantom of a great dragon appeared around the dark star ice serpent, wrapping around it like a suit of armor. The blood-red face stared at the dark star ice serpent. Its mouth suddenly moved, emitting two strange syllables. Although no one could understand what it was, they instantly understood what it was saying. Dragon race. In the next moment, a heaven-shaking explosion erupted. The dark star ice serpent covered in dragon armor shot into the skies, colliding with the blood-red face. In an instant, the impact of the energy caused the sky to shatter like a fragile mirror. Everything that could be seen was pitch-black darkness. It seemed to be empty, but it was filled with destructive energy that was enough to crush any living being below the divine Tao into powder. Because they collided in the skies above Dragon City, powerful shockwaves suddenly descended. It was like a million mountains were crashing down, causing the entire foundation of Dragon City to cave in by several meters. Luckily, at this critical moment, a strength erupted from Dragon City, blocking the shockwaves outside. Otherwise, Dragon City would already be littered with corpses. But there was one place that wasn't within the scope of protection, and that was the arena. It seemed to be independent of Dragon City, as if it had been moved here after Dragon City was built and wasn't a part of Dragon City at all. Thus, the cultivators that remained in the arena became the rare survivors of this impact. Like a strong wind sweeping through a field of wheat, those that fell to the ground howled in pain. But this was only a bit better. The most miserable ones were those cultivators that silently fell to the ground. Their bodies twitched involuntarily as blood wildly flowed out from their orifices. Those that had tried their luck weren't an exception. Their fates were particularly miserable. No, there was one person that hadn't fallen. Chinyu looked up, his eyes deep. The other party seemed to sense him. Their gazes met, and Chinyu instantly determined that this seemingly ordinary cultivator had another soul hidden beneath his pale face. A powerhouse from the Dark Parliament? As expected, they would not miss the finals of the Beast King battle. Sage sighed inwardly. But now that he had been exposed as a counselor of the Dark Parliament, he had his own pride and reservations. He bowed and greeted Chinyu. Then, his lips moved and his voice sounded out in Chinyu's ears. Parliament Counselor Sage greets Mr. Ningqin. With everything he had personally experienced today, Chinyu had enough qualifications to earn his respect, even if he had already decided to kill Chinyu no matter the cost. The Parliament would never allow an uncontrollable source of danger to appear. Chinyu nodded, not saying anything. He looked up into the skies, where the tumbling sea of blood blocked out all vision. The result was about to be revealed. He wasn't too worried. With the ancient status, since he was taking action, he definitely had absolute confidence in himself. Moreover, the blood-colored face had crossed over and did not have the home advantage, so it was only natural that it would fail. And indeed, not long after these thoughts raced through his mind, the thick blood-red color in his field of vision began to rapidly fade away like a falling tide. The Dark Star Ice Serpent's figure appeared. The great dragon armor covering its body was now broken and tattered, revealing its scarred body. But its aura was still formidable. It howled through the skies, roaring without end, recklessly venting its strength. The blood-colored face that crossed over vanished from sight. The outcome had been decided. At Radiance Temple, North Xiong's face instantly paled, without the least bit of blood left in her. The Moonkeep Tower Master stood up. Her eyebrows were tightly furrowed and her eyes were icy cold. The Phoenix Luan had been defeated. It had actually been defeated. Things had begun to spiral out of control. As North Xiong was lost in a daze, lost in the future, the Moonkeep Tower Master had already regained her composure. She took a deep breath and her eyes turned icy cold. Since an accident had occurred, she could only use her last resort. Before Hu Fu could speak, she would send him to the Yellow Springs. Within the sleeve of the robe, 5 fair and slender fingers spread open. The space quietly split open, and a pitch-black jade tablet flew out from within. The Moonkeep Tower Master grasped it in her hand and crushed it without hesitation. With a light cracking sound, the jade card shattered into countless pieces. On the hidden Fog Sex platform, Hufu's eyes widened. He spat out a mouthful of black blood that began to corrode the ground. A thick curse aura rapidly filled the air. Just looking at this pool of black blood would cause one's soul to tremble. Protect the Sect Master. Several hidden Fog Sect elders were panic-stricken. Because of the Dark Star Ice Serpent's victory, the ecstatic smiles on their faces didn't even have time to spread before they froze. Because they didn't know the specific attribute of the curse, they didn't dare to touch Hufu's body. They could only closely circle around him, their eyes sweeping around like hawks as they tried to find the murderer that had plotted against Hufu. Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He swept his eyes over the expressionless Moonkeep Tower Master. Because he had fused with the arena's aura, he was able to sense something. As he thought, Hufu didn't hesitate to sacrifice his life in order to become the champion of this Beast King War. There was a hidden story behind this, and the other party involved was Moonkeep Tower. The Dark Star Ice Serpent had won, and the Moonkeep Tower Master hadn't hesitated to take Hufu's life. It seemed that things weren't as simple as they seemed. However, although this woman was ruthless and decisive, Hufu had made preparations ahead of time. Perhaps things wouldn't go as she wished. He violently coughed and spat out a massive amount of black blood. Hufu waved his hand, stopping the disciples from helping him up. The curse on his body was not only inherited, but also had a formidable ability to spread. Once it touched the blood that was corroded by the curse, it would infect him. His field of vision darkened. Hufu clenched his teeth, clinging onto the last shred of clarity he had left. He had already reached the end, and he could not fall here. The hopes and hopes of the past sect masters and countless seniors would be fulfilled in his hands today. Who? He violently gasped for breath. His nose and mouth seemed to burn, and a tearing pain spread out from his chest. But Hufu smiled. Indeed, the preparations of the previous generations had been useful. He had barely managed to survive. Although he would soon die, it was enough for him to complete what was to come. The weak and powerless heart in his chest suddenly began to beat with vigor. A trace of red appeared on Hufu's pale face. Then, he rapidly became younger. In just several breaths of time, he had restored his original appearance. His back was straight, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. But the decaying aura around Hufu's body didn't weaken at all. Rather, it became even thicker. He was like a freshly unearthed corpse that had been buried deep underground for countless years. Although he maintained a fresh and vibrant appearance, the insides had long since rotted away. Sect Master, your aura... An elder had a shocked expression. Hufu smiled. My condition is very good, unprecedentedly good. Today, I will break the cursed shackles that have imprisoned my hidden Fog Sex bloodline for generations to come. He didn't speak further. He took 2 steps forwards and cupped his hands together, bowing deeply. Mister, the hidden Fog Sect will remember your great graciousness for generations to come. As long as it is a cultivator of my hidden Fog Sect, we will all obey your orders in the future. Qin Yu turned and lightly said, You don't have much time left. If you have any wishes, then hurry up and do them. Don't delay me. Hufu respectfully said, Yes, thank you for your understanding, mister. But he sighed inwardly. He originally wanted to use this chance to draw a line between the hidden Fog Sect and Mister. But it was clear that Mister didn't want to be entangled with him too much. Luckily, with this matter at Dragon City, the hidden Fog Sect could still borrow their influence. If someone were to plot against them in the future, they would surely have to worry about it. High above the highest heavens, the Dark Star Ice Serpent howled as it flew back. The moment it fell to the ground, it fell into a deep slumber. The Dragon Soul's voice echoed in Qin Yu's ears. I have completed what I promised you. Moreover, I left some strength in this little fellow's body. In the future, it might be able to serve my master. As its words fell, the dragon's soul dissipated. It was only an avatar to begin with. Its main body could gather and scatter with a thought. The Darkstar Ice Serpent's aura rapidly fell. But its breathing was steady and it hadn't suffered any fatal injuries. Moreover, with the experience of being possessed by the Dragon Soul today, in addition to the strength left behind by the Dragon Soul, it was sure to have great harvests once it awoke. The black flames that wrapped around the Phoenix Lawn vanished. Where it was originally located, there was nothing left. In order to summon a powerful existence from the abyss to cross over, the Phoenix Lawn had paid nearly everything. If it had won, it might have been able to live a little longer. But now that the blood-red face had been defeated and it had suffered a backlash, its soul and body had been incinerated into nothingness. One side was unconscious and one side was dead. The result of the battle had been decided. Rumble, rumble. The massive Dragon City arena was rapidly repaired. Then, the platform belonging to the Hidden Fog sect rapidly rose up until it reached the center of the arena. Countless cultivators looked towards it. This was the glory and respect that the champion should enjoy. At almost the same time, a golden light appeared in the air, covering all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators as well as the supporters behind them. Even if they weren't in the arena, this golden light would still descend. This was a gift from Dragon City, a reward that all victors could obtain. You could feel the golden light fusing into his body. There seemed to be some changes, but he couldn't pinpoint the specifics. It was just that his mind seemed a bit clearer and more transparent. And this was the true function of Dragon City's gift. It wouldn't directly increase a cultivator's cultivation, but would strengthen their perception so that their future cultivation speed would be faster. Of course, the golden light that Shinyu obtained was different from everyone else's. For instance, the amount of golden light fusing into his body was at least dozens of times that of others. But in the midst of all the flashing golden light, no one discovered this. The champion position has been decided. The final victor of the arena battle. You may now put forth your requests. A deep and low voice echoed out from the arena. This was the key to today's battle between the 7 great sects of the Eastern Plains. With the arena's supervision, no one would dare to go back on their word. To a great extent, it could guarantee that the champion would obtain the greatest amount of rights. Hufu took a deep breath. He loudly said, "Great Spirit of the arena, the Hidden Fog sect is willing to give up all rights as the champion in exchange for your help." Whoosh! There was an uproar. The reason the 7 great sects desperately fought for the champion position was to obtain enough benefits. But now the Hidden Fog sect had given up on all of this. Just what were they planning on doing? The Hidden Fog sect cultivators revealed looks of bewilderment and confusion. But Hufu's actions had won him enough respect. They maintained their silence, waiting for the sect master to give them an explanation. After a moment of silence, the voice from the arena sounded out once more. "Very well." Chapter 779. The crowd was in an uproar. Hufu's accusations revealed an unbelievable secret. The Hidden Fog sect, one of the 7 great sects of the Eastern Plains, was actually nothing more than a puppet controlled by others. And the one controlling the Hidden Fog sect was the mysterious and low-key Moonkeep Tower. Countless eyes looked at the expressionless face of the Tower Master of the Moonkeep Tower. Her face looked even more ordinary and unlikable. Their hearts were filled with suspicion. It was hard to imagine that this woman had such a terrifying secret technique. But since Hufu had spoken, and he had even given up his position as champion in exchange for the Colosseum's help, there was no doubt that this matter was real. The ones who were the most shocked and incredulous were the Hidden Fog sect cultivators. It was like they had been struck by a bolt of lightning. They all froze where they stood. They had always been proud of their incomparably powerful sect, but it was actually a puppet controlled by someone else. Then what were they? "Sect Master, what's going on? My Hidden Fog sect has an inheritance that has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Our strength is unrivaled. How could we possibly be controlled by Moonkeep Tower?" Sect Master, please explain this matter clearly. The agitated elder's faces flushed red. Hufu had a solemn expression, a bit of bitterness in his eyes. He slowly said, "This curse has existed since the founding of the Hidden Fog sect and has been passed down through the sect. As long as someone cultivates an inherited cultivation method, they will become the medium of this curse." For hundreds of thousands of years, the successive sect masters have bitterly searched for a way to remove the curse. However, apart from paying with their lives, they have not obtained anything. According to the sect's ancient records, several former sect masters who suddenly died because of this. His eyes were filled with pain and determination. But our ancestors never gave up resisting. Generation after generation, they finally found a way to temporarily shield the power of the curse. But this method can only be used once. Once it fails and is discovered, the Hidden Fog sect will face a great calamity. Thus, we have been bitterly waiting all this time, waiting for a chance to act. My teacher, my teacher's teacher, they all died while waiting. When it came to my sect's generation, I finally found a chance. Because the Hidden Fog sect has obtained Mister's help, after thinking it over and over again, I have decided to act. As for this, the Hidden Fog sect master's bloodline experienced tens of thousands of years of struggle from over a dozen ancestors, and finally fulfilled their wish. Today, I, Hufu, the 17th sect master of the Hidden Fog sect, will break the shackles that bind the Hidden Fog sect and fight for true freedom for the Hidden Fog lineage. More than 100,000 years had passed, and 17 generations of sect leaders had fought for it. If they had not heard it with their own ears, they would never have believed it. But all of this came from Hufu's personal account, and it happened in today's situation, so there was no way he could be wrong. Moonkeep Tower. Moonkeep Tower. Who would have thought that the most low-key of the 7 great sects, the one with the least obvious influence, had actually controlled the Hidden Fog sect hundreds of thousands of years ago? Now that he knew this and carefully thought about it, he discovered that for countless years, the Hidden Fog sect had never come into conflict with Moonkeep Tower on their own initiative. Even if there were conflicts between them, they would always choose to take a step back for one reason or another. These coincidences had become the irrefutable evidence. A Hidden Fog sect elder cried out, "Sect Master, why didn't you tell us about this? Since there are flaws in the method of inheritance, we can just abandon it and not use it. Why should we let the 16 former sect masters bear such heavy pressure?" Hufu shook his head. "It's useless. Once we stop cultivating the method of inheritance, the hidden curse strength will erupt. At that time, the entire Hidden Fog sect will be destroyed. So even if we know that the method of inheritance is the source of the curse, we can only cultivate it generation after generation. But luckily, after today, this curse will be completely uprooted. The future juniors of our Hidden Fog sect will no longer be enslaved by others. Sect Master, we have let you down. We have offended Sect Master many times before. I ask that you forgive us. We were foolish." Hufu took a deep breath. It's all in the past. He looked at all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators and said in a low voice, "I hope that you will always remember today as the day the Hidden Fog sect was reborn. Moreover, you must remember that the reason the Hidden Fog sect was reborn is all because of Mister's help. Without Mister, we would still be struggling in slavery, and perhaps we would never have had the chance to escape their control." Hufu turned and bowed. Mister's great graciousness is something the Hidden Fog sect will never forget. In the future, as long as Mister commands us, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. Walala, all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators followed suit and bowed. We will never forget Mister's graciousness. Chin shook his head inwardly. This fellow Hufu was clearly repaying his graciousness. But the truth was that he was doing everything he could to ensure the safety of the Hidden Fog sect. Well, since he had sacrificed his life for this, and the Hidden Fog sect had suffered so many hardships, Chin wouldn't bother with him. Chin nodded. "If there's a need in the future, I will naturally ask." Hufu was overjoyed. Endless gratitude filled his eyes. Thank you, mister. It seemed as if the hidden fog sect would have to shoulder a massive pressure from now on. But the truth was that with Mister's strength, how could he possibly need their help? But with these words, the hidden fog sect had a kinship with Mister. This was a powerful protective talisman. The voice in the arena continued to sound out. Moonkeep Tower, are you willing to lift the curse of the hidden fog sect? The Moonkeep Tower master bowed. I will follow your will. She lifted a hand. Light surged in her palm, and a black stone tablet appeared. On the surface of the tablet, countless tadpole-shaped runes wriggled about, emitting a dark halo of light. With just a glance, Hufu was able to determine that this stone tablet was the source of the curse hidden within the hidden fog sect's inherited cultivation method. This sort of heart-palpitating feeling, as if everything was under someone's control, he couldn't be wrong. Although he didn't dare to believe that Moonkeep Tower would give up so easily, the truth was right in front of him. Perhaps they feared the will of the arena. After all, the high-level figures of the 7 great sects were well aware of just how formidable it was. The Moonkeep Tower master lifted a hand and slapped it. The black stone tablet shattered inch by inch, tumbling about as it dissipated into powder. All of the hidden fog sect cultivators felt their hearts relax, as if some invisible shackles had been unlocked within their bodies. It was only at this moment that everyone truly believed that the curse truly existed. As they thought about how they were puppets controlled by someone else, and how their life and death were controlled by someone else, they broke out in a cold sweat. Panic filled their hearts, but also endless anger. All of them glared at Moonkeep Tower's platform. All of the hidden fog sect cultivators were sure that this was a great enemy that they wouldn't rest until one of them died. To be enslaved for tens of thousands of years. Such a great enmity could only end when one side was completely annihilated. The Moonkeep Tower master was expressionless. She lowered her head, hiding the coldness and ridicule in her eyes. How naive, how laughable. Did they really think they could rid themselves of the curse like this? It was just that after this incident, Moonkeep Tower would clearly be targeted. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, they could only change their appearance. This was a somewhat troublesome matter. As for the hostility from the hidden fog sect, there was no need to care about that group of people that were doomed to die in this world. Hufu was excited and his face flushed red. The shackles that imprisoned the hidden fog sect had finally been broken. Even if he died now, he would have no regrets. Teacher, the truth is that sect master Hufu wasn't bad at all, but his ending was too pitiful. After the dust settled, Yundai happily walked over. She softly said, a look of pity on her face. Beneath the black robes, Chinyu had a calm expression. Hufu had been benevolent and obtained benevolence. This was already a very good ending. As for feeling sorry for him, in this world, there were countless people more pitiful than Hufu. How could he care about all of them? In this world, it wasn't easy for a person to take care of themselves and those they cared about. What Chinyu was thinking about now was how to deal with the Dark Parliament. If he could avoid conflict with them, that would be the best result. But now, it seemed that the difficulty was a bit high. At this time, the ancient's voice sounded out in his mind. This little girl is right. This Hufu is indeed pitiful. There is clearly a deeper meaning to these words. Chinyu frowned. My lord, what do you mean? The curse has only been half lifted. As long as those fellows are willing, they can easily restore themselves. In the end, all of them will die. The ancient clearly knew the origin of the curse. With Moonkeep Tower's status, it didn't have the qualifications to mention it. It seemed that there was an even more formidable influence behind them. Chinyu frowned. He didn't have too many connections with the hidden fog sect, and he didn't have much of a favorable impression of their style of doing things. Now that the Beast King War had ended and the bet with the Dark Parliament had been completed, regardless of whether or not the agreement was valid, Chinyu had no reason to wade into these muddy waters. After a moment of silence, he looked at Hufu. At this time, Hufu was smiling with incomparable happiness. His entire body exuded a relaxed and joyful feeling. But at this time, Hufu's aura began to weaken. His youthful face rapidly paled. His time was about to come. Qin Yu originally thought that he could coldly watch from the sidelines, but the tumbling emotions in his chest were clearly protesting. He suddenly said, "Yin Dai, do you think Hu Fu is pitiful?" Yin Dai was startled. She subconsciously nodded, but then her face flushed red. "Teacher, I don't have any other meaning. You don't need to care about me. It was all because of her teacher that she was able to live peacefully until now. She didn't have the qualifications to influence her teacher's judgment. Moreover, her teacher had already helped the Hidden Fog sect a great deal." Looking at Yun Dai's flustered appearance, Qin Yu shook his head. "I don't want to meddle in other people's business, but some people have gone too far." Yun Dai was puzzled, but as she saw that her teacher seemed to be talking to himself and didn't seem to have any intention of continuing, she cleverly shut her mouth. "My lord, I hope that you can help them," the ancient said. "With your temperament, should I say that you have good intentions, or that you are too soft-hearted? If that was a test just now, then I would have judged you to have failed." Qin Yu said, "I know. But in this world, there are some things that I have to manage. If I have caused trouble for my lord, then that is my fault." The ancient said, "I can help you, but that can be considered as compensation to you once more. I hope that you can forget the unpleasantness from before. In the end, the only ancient left in this world are you and me." Chapter 780. Selectively forget everything he experienced in the shadow world? That was clearly impossible. Qin Yu had lied. He was well aware of this, and so was the ancient. But this wasn't important. What was important was that the relationship between the two sides had eased up. Only like this could they continue smoothly. "I will temporarily lend you a portion of my strength. As for what you want to do next, that is up to you." As the ancient's voice fell, a boundless ocean-like aura fused into Qin Yu's body. He could easily control this strength, and it wouldn't affect his mortal body. Indeed, with the level of the ancient's consciousness, he was able to accomplish many seemingly inconceivable things. But in the end, this wasn't Qin Yu's own strength, so he couldn't control it as he wished. When he moved, a terrifying aura broke out from his body. At this moment, it was like a giant had appeared. Its feet stepped on the earth, its head reaching into the heavens, its eyes overlooking the earth. All life was covered in the aura it emitted. The entire arena fell deathly silent. All the cultivators turned their heads to look at the source of this aura. They felt as if they were ants beneath the feet of this giant, about to be crushed at any moment. This was a strength that completely surpassed the limits of what they could withstand. It was even more terrifying than the blood-red face that crossed over from before. All they could see was space constantly collapsing and reforming. Their line of sight was split apart, causing everything to blur. A black-robed figure sat on a stone chair. He was like a god that had descended into the world, his endless majesty causing one to instinctively feel awe. Yin Dai's eyes widened. She didn't know what had happened for her teacher's aura to undergo such a heaven-shaking change. Or was this the true strength that her teacher had been hiding? Indeed, her teacher had always hidden his depths and was always able to give others pleasant surprises. Unless he wanted to, no one could truly see through his depths. Yin Dai's face flushed red. Such a powerful teacher was clearly the best thing to rely on. Perhaps she should think of a way to change her teacher's mind and have him accept the chaotic Sky Chronicle. Hu Fu had a nervous expression. "Mister, you are..." Great waves were already tumbling in his heart. Although he already knew that Mister was mysterious and formidable, it was only now that he discovered that his previous thoughts were far too ridiculous. However, it was only now that he realized how laughable his previous thoughts were. Mister's true strength was actually this powerful. But now that everything had been resolved, why would Mister do such a thing? Was it purely to show off his strength? No, Mister would never do such a senseless thing. In the crowd, the face of the puppet controlled by the sage alternated between red and green, and its eyes revealed bitterness and helplessness. Just now, He had been thinking about how to keep Chinyu here and had even come up with several plans. But looking at it now, everything he had done was simply a joke. With the aura that erupted from Chinyu, even if the Parliament used their strongest trump card, they still wouldn't have absolute confidence they could kill him. Big trouble. Chinyu looked down. He paused for a moment and slowly said, "Hu Fu, do you think your wish has been fulfilled?" Hu Fu's expression changed, but he still said truthfully, "Mister, I am able to sense that the cursed power in my body has indeed disappeared." Chinyu lifted a finger. Then, Moonkeep Tower Master, if you answer this question, can you give me a different answer? The deep voice carried a powerful aura that could not be resisted, constantly rolling in the air. The Moonkeep Tower Master's complexion changed. When Chinyu's aura erupted, she already had a foreboding premonition. She didn't want that to happen. How'd he know? Her thoughts raced. The Moonkeep Tower Master took a deep breath. But before she could speak, Chinyu interrupted her. "I don't like it when others lie to me. So, you only have one chance. If your answer does not satisfy me, then none of you can leave." "Don't leave." This was not an invitation to stay as a guest. The Moonkeep Tower Master stiffened. She was locked onto by Chinyu's aura and a cold sweat dripped down her back. She felt a cold chill run down her spine. This person really dared to kill them, and more importantly, he had the strength to do so. She clenched her teeth and said, "The hidden fog sex curse still has some loose ends, but this is the limit of what I can do." Hu Fu's eyes widened. The hidden fog sect members cried out in alarm. They never imagined that there would still be remnants of the curse left in their bodies. If it weren't for Chinyu discovering it, the consequences could be imagined. Thinking of this, all of them felt their hairs stand on end. "I beg Mister to save us." The hidden fog sect members all fell to their knees. Using the authority of a leader to exchange for the interference of the arena's will, there was only one chance. Moreover, the Moonkeep Tower Master had followed orders and removed the curse from the hidden fog sect members. She hadn't violated the rules. So even though they knew that the curse hadn't completely disappeared, there was no way for them to ask the arena's will to help. In other words, everything that Hu Fu had done with his life on the line had been completely wasted. Now, the only one who could save them was Chinyu. Since you cannot make the decision, then find someone who can. Without waiting for the Moonkeep Tower Master to respond, Chinyu continued to say, "Don't say that you don't have a way. I don't want to say the same word a second time. You should understand what I mean." The Moonkeep Tower Master nodded. "I will follow my lord's will." Since she admitted it, she had already prepared herself. Today's events had indeed surpassed the limits of her control. As she knelt to the ground, the Moonkeep Tower Master began to recite something. Low and indistinct syllables spread through the air. No one could clearly hear what she was saying, but they could feel an indescribable pressure from it. It was like some formidable existence was about to descend upon Dragon City. Bang! With a dull rumble, space violently fluctuated. A vortex appeared, revealing an incomparably massive eye. "Why have you summoned me?" Powerful divine sense fluctuations swept through the entire audience. As it approached Chinyu, it suddenly stopped. In the next moment, the giant eye locked onto his figure. The Moonkeep Tower Master's tone was extremely respectful. She knelt down and bowed. "Reporting to my lord, this black-robed Mr. wishes to completely dispel the hidden fog sex curse. I cannot do this, so I can only ask for your judgment." Her eyes flashed with a cold intent. Even though she only vaguely knew of the influence behind Moonkeep Tower, even a small portion of it was astonishing enough. So what if this mysterious black-robed man was tyrannical? The Moonkeep Tower Master believed that as long as the great figures behind her were willing to help, suppressing him wouldn't be difficult at all. "If you allow me to summon the great figures, then I will fulfill your wish. I want to see just how long you can be arrogant for." But what happened next left the Moonkeep Tower Master's eyes wide open. The giant eye in the vortex stared at Chinyu for a moment and then said in a low voice, "I agree to this matter." As the words fell, the vortex dissipated, as if the owner of the eye didn't want to face Chinyu any longer. Or, it was more accurate to say that it didn't want to face the aura that Chinyu emitted. But this sort of direct agreement, and then immediately leaving, no matter how one looked at it, there was a hint of panic in it. For a time, everyone looked at Chinyu with increasingly awe in their eyes. The Moonkeep Tower Master was stunned. Her complexion paled even further. Luckily, when she spoke just now, she didn't reveal her inner thoughts. Otherwise, even if this black-robed man killed her, she feared the great figures behind her wouldn't say anything. Just who was this person? Even the great figures feared him to such an extent. An independent small world that was layered on top of the main world. There was a vast space within, and it could even receive the power of the sun, moon, and stars. At this time, the sun was shining brightly. In a massive mountain valley, there was a grand palace built into the side of a mountain. A group of black-clothed cultivators stood on both sides of a long table. Third from the left, an old man opened his eyes. One of his eyes was normal, and the other was a strange silver pupil. He looked at everyone and said in a low voice, "There was an accident." When my consciousness descended, I felt the aura of the Dragon City Master. Then, he recounted what happened just now. Impossible. That powerful Dragon City Master was killed hundreds of thousands of years ago. You and I are both sure of this. In the ancestral land, his body is still suppressed. It is impossible for the Dragon City Master to resurrect. Third Elder, is there a possibility that your senses were wrong? The Third Elder shook his head. The Dragon City Master has fought with my clan many times. The memories passed down by our ancestors are completely the same as the aura I felt today. I'm sure that what that black-robed man released was the aura of the Dragon City Master. The hall fell silent. The elders on both sides of the table tightly frowned. If the Third Elder was so sure, then the chances of him being wrong were extremely low. If it really was the aura of the Dragon City Master, could it be that he hadn't died yet? No one dared to be sure of this. After all, a peerless powerhouse that had reached that level of strength would have all sorts of inconceivable methods. Even if their body was torn apart and their soul was swallowed and scattered, there was still a chance of resurrection. If the Dragon City Master were to resurrect, a storm of blood would surely rise in this world. It had to be known that when he perished in the past, some people had played an extremely dishonorable role. Luckily, although their Ink race was hostile to the Dragon City Master, they hadn't interfered in the war of the past. Even if he were to resurrect, he shouldn't come looking for them. Soon, the elders reached a decision. They agreed to the black-robed cultivator's request and completely lifted the curse on the Hidden Fog sect. To offend the resurrected Dragon City Master for such a minor matter wasn't worth it at all. Although it was a loss of face to these old fellows that had lived for countless years, there were times when something like face could be thrown away. In the ancestral land, a jade card hanging in midair shattered. This represented that the curse that had enslaved the Hidden Fog sect for hundreds of thousands of years had completely dissipated. A gust of wind blew past, setting off a series of soft, rustling sounds. Looking around, one could see countless jade cards hanging from the ceiling of the cave with red ropes. The number was incalculable. Beast Fighting Arena. Chinyu lightly said, "The curse has been lifted." In this state, he could feel a change in the morale of the Hidden Fog sect cultivators. They were no longer as gloomy and cold as before. Hu Fu's heart relaxed. He trembled as he fell to his knees. He could no longer withstand the weakness in his body and closed his eyes forever. There was a grateful smile on his face. "Teacher, this disciple didn't disappoint your expectations." "I did it." "Sect Master." With sorrowful cries, the Hidden Fog sect cultivators gathered around, their eyes red. They clenched their jaws. As they looked at Radiance Temple's stone platform, their killing intent rose. Although they knew that there was another influence behind Moonkeep Tower, they were still hateful. This was also the only thing they could do for Sect Master Hu Fu. The Moonkeep Tower Master was nervous. She didn't care about the Hidden Fog sect cultivators, but Chinyu's attitude would determine their life or death. She took a deep breath and cautiously said, "My lord, can we leave now?" Chinyu waved his hand. The Moonkeep Tower Master was overjoyed. After bowing, she led the cultivators behind her away, afraid that he would change his mind. The hidden fog sect didn't stop them. What they needed to do now was to bring Sect Master Hu Fu's body back to the sect so he could rest in peace. An elder bowed. Mister, as Sect Master Hu Fu said, we will engrave your graciousness in our hearts. All the hidden fog sect cultivators knelt to the ground and then left with Hu Fu's corpse. The atmosphere was solemn and bleak. Watching them leave, Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. The Beast King War has ended. You can all leave. No one dared to object. The cultivators watching from all over bowed and left. Soon, the massive arena became empty. There was only Qin Yu, his disciple, and the puppet controlled by the sage. Chapter 781. The puppet cultivator controlled by sage bowed. My lord, please speak. Qin Yu lifted a finger. In the Hidden Fog sect, we both agreed to use the result of the Beast King War to decide the ownership of the Chaotic Sky Chronicle. Although the process was a bit unpleasant, I have now won. Counselor Sage, there is no need to deny it. Although there is no direct evidence of what happened to me before, you can freely verify it. As for these unpleasant matters, I can pretend that they didn't happen. The Dark Parliament only needs to abide by the bet and not act against my disciple or her future descendants in the future. As long as Counselor Sage agrees, this matter will end here. You and I can pretend that we never came into contact and walk our separate paths. Sage thought for a moment. He said, My lord's broad-mindedness leaves me in admiration. According to reason, you have already made concessions, and the Dark Parliament should return the favor and abide by the bet. But this matter is not something that I can decide alone. I hope that my lord can give me some time. Qin Yu lightly said, You can summon the Dark Parliament counselors now. I will wait here for your reply. Sage cupped his hands together. Then, I asked my lord to wait a moment. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. The puppet cultivator that was being controlled fell into a deep slumber. Yun Dai's face was filled with gratitude. Teacher, thank you. Qin Yu waved his hand, not saying anything. He looked at the puppet controlled by Sage, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Borrowing the strength of the ancient's consciousness to help the Hidden Fog sect was one of the reasons. He also wanted to use this chance to deter the Dark Parliament and avoid conflict with them. Although with the existence of the ancient's consciousness, Qin Yu was confident he could protect himself even if the Dark Parliament attacked. He didn't want to use too much of the ancient's strength. He hoped that the Dark Parliament would retreat in the face of difficulties. Otherwise, if he wanted to safely leave Dragon City today, he feared there would be a great deal of trouble. Dark Parliament headquarters, in a hall illuminated by torches, 6 counselors gathered around a round table. Sage relayed Qin Yu's words. He swept his eyes over the crowd. Fellow counselors, Ning Qin's strength and status have surpassed our expectations time and time again. With the strength he erupted with today, continuing to be enemies with him is not a wise choice. After a brief pause, he continued, So, my proposal is to agree to Ning Qin's request in exchange for reconciliation with him. For the Dark Parliament, this is the best choice. I object. Oriol's tender and childish voice was incomparably sharp at this moment. Flames gathered in her eyes, and they flashed with madness and stubbornness. The Chaos Sky Chronicle is related to a great secret. It is the goal that the Dark Parliament has been painstakingly pursuing for countless years. You and I are well aware of its importance. If we can't obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle, we won't have any harvests even after 100,000 years. Limitless, gloomy voice flowed with a chill. Counselor Oriol's attitude is the same as mine. The Book of the Chaos is the Parliament's most important goal. We absolutely cannot lose it. Sage frowned. He said in a low voice, But in the current situation, if we refuse to abide by the bet, we will completely break off relations with Ning Qin. Have you thought about the consequences? Not only will the existence of the Parliament be exposed, but we will also have to bear the brunt of his frenzied revenge. Ning Qin's wrath will definitely cause great losses to the Parliament. It might even shake the very foundation of the parliament. I don't think anyone wants to see this happen. Jasmine nodded. I agree with Counselor Sage's words. The risk of breaking off relations with Ning Qin is too high. If we can't obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle, the Council can still think of other methods. There's a chance of success. The always silent Counselor Lone Mountain suddenly opened his mouth. I admit that the other methods that Counselor Jasmine spoke of are indeed possible, but how long will it take to find them? 1,000 years? 10,000 years? Or perhaps even longer? He swept his eyes over the crowd. Flames condensed around his body, and he exuded a bone-chilling chill. This amount of time may not be much to you counselors, but I cannot afford to wait. If I give up on the Chaotic Sky Chronicle and can't find a new solution, I will exhaust my lifespan and die. So this time, no matter what, I will not give up. If the Parliament decides to compromise, I will choose to withdraw from the Dark Parliament. No one can stop me from obtaining the Chaotic Sky Chronicle, not even those present here. The air seemed to be filled with the scent of blood. The round table fell deathly silent. Sage and Jasmine felt a headache coming on. They were convinced that with Counselor Lone Mountain's crazy temperament, he would absolutely do what he said. Oriole screamed, Sage, do you really want to force a counselor to leave the Parliament? Such consequences are truly unbearable. The Dark Parliament only had 7 counselors. Unless a counselor died, it was impossible to add more. This was because every counselor was an indispensable part of the Dark Parliament. Losing a counselor meant that the Dark Parliament would no longer be complete and its strength would be greatly weakened. With an erratic aura, Counselor Moonshadow said, In my heart, I agree with Counselor Sage's proposal. Becoming enemies with Ning Qin is indeed a terrible decision. But regretfully, because of some reasons that are difficult to express, I am facing the same situation as Counselor Lone Mountain. If I cannot unravel that secret as soon as possible, I will likely decay and die. I am unwilling to accept such a fate. So, even though I know that this is wrong, I still have to fight. I agree with Counselor Oriole's proposal and refuse to compromise. A crucial vote. 4-2. Even if Sage used his status as a temporary speaker, he would only have 3 votes at most. He would still be in the minority. Jasmine opened her mouth, but in the end she didn't say anything. She looked at Counselor Moonshadow, a complex expression in her eyes. In the face of life or death, nothing mattered, so she wasn't angry at Moonshadow's betrayal. But she was still willing to make one final effort, because her intuition told her that becoming enemies with Ning Qin was the worst decision the Dark Parliament could make. As time passed, this feeling didn't weaken at all. Rather, it became increasingly intense. I proposed that before we break off relations with Ning Qin, we try one last conciliatory plan. We would use a transaction to obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle. As long as he is willing, the Dark Parliament can accept any conditions. I believe that none of the other counselors will oppose this. Limitless said, yes. If he had a choice, he wasn't willing to take this risk. Oriole sneered. What a naive and childish idea. It is impossible to succeed. Jasmine lightly said, even if there's only a sliver of hope, we should still try. Sage made the final decision. Then it is decided. On behalf of all the counselors, I will express the Dark Parliament's stance to Ning Qin. Shua, the flaming figure faded away. The other counselors hadn't left yet. They would wait here for Sage to bring back peace or war. That's right, with the strength that Qin Yu had revealed, breaking off relations with him would be a war that the Dark Parliament would need to go all out. Beast Fighting Arena. The puppet controlled by Sage woke up. The moment Qin Yu saw Sage's eyes, his heart sank. He had a foreboding premonition. And as he thought, Sage's following words confirmed his thoughts. My lord, I have already brought back the Dark Parliament's final decision. Although we know that to be enemies with you is an extremely foolish thing to do, I apologize that we have no other choice. So regarding the bet, we will have to break our word. But we still hope that my lord can hand over Yundai to us in a peaceful manner. For this, the Dark Parliament is willing to bear any price and give my lord sufficient rewards. I hope that you can seriously consider this. Peace or war? That is all up to you. After speaking, Sage straightened his body. He looked at Qinyu, waiting for his response. Beside him, the nervous Yundai instantly paled. Her body shivered as she looked at her teacher. Qinyu's silence undoubtedly indicated that he was withstanding a great deal of pressure. As expected, these people possessed a strength that even her teacher wasn't willing to provoke. Yundai thought that she should do something. Even if she couldn't repay her teacher, she couldn't drag him into this quagmire. But before she could speak, Qinyu raised a hand and interrupted her. If I can't even protect my own disciple, then what use is there in cultivating? He nodded at Sage. Then, let's go to war. In truth, to Qinyu, this was an unwise decision. But there were some bottom lines that should always be upheld, even if there was a price to pay. Sage sighed inwardly. This result wasn't beyond his expectations. He bowed and respectfully said, Then, I ask my lord to take care of yourself. He turned and walked away. Qinyu didn't stop him. It was only a puppet. It wasn't worth wasting his strength on. If it were Sage himself, he wouldn't mind attacking and cutting down this senator where he stood. Since they had chosen war, only the destruction of one side could end all of this. Teacher, tears streamed down Yundai's face. Qinyu lightly said, Since I know that saving you took a great deal of effort, you must live well in the future. That way, everything I've done won't be in vain. Yundai nodded. At this moment, she recognized that the man in front of her was the one she would rely on for the rest of her life, one that could no longer be replaced. Qinyu stood up and took her hand. Let's go. His steps weren't fast, but with every step he took, he crossed a great distance. After several breaths of time, he arrived at the edge of the arena. In a temporarily uninhabited courtyard, he lifted a hand and pushed open the door. And behind the door was an open spatial gate. Qinyu turned and said, Hide inside. When it's safe, I will bring you out. Yundai didn't hesitate. After respectfully bowing to Qinyu, she stepped inside. She was well aware that if she stayed behind, she would only be a burden to her teacher. The spatial gate dissipated with it. Qinyu let out a breath, a helpless expression on his face. In the end, things had developed in the worst possible direction. It was truly distressing. But luckily, after sending Yundai into the Yellow Springs mystic realm, he could attack without any scruples. By borrowing the strength of the ancient's consciousness, it shouldn't be too difficult to escape. He turned and left. This time, Qinyu didn't stop. He flew straight out of Dragon City. Because he couldn't conceal his aura, his momentum was astonishing as he left. Massive tracts of space shattered around him, causing endless heaven and earth's spiritual strength to rise up. Deep rumbling sounds rang out, attracting many awe. It's that mysterious lord from the hidden fog sect. Many cultivators sighed. Chapter 782. Stepping out of Dragon City, Qinyu stepped through the void. Every step he took caused space to twist. Then, his figure vanished, and when he reappeared, he was far away. But after calmly walking forwards for a moment, Qinyu had no choice but to stop. He looked up and saw a Taoist blocking his way. He had straw sandals on his feet and a bamboo cane in his hand. His slightly messy white hair was still stained with dewdrops that had yet to dry. Looking at the straw sandals and mud on his straw sandals, he looked like he had just come out of some vegetable garden. If it weren't for the fact that his hair was tied up in a bun with a wooden stick, then his dark and wrinkled face would have been that of an old farmer working in the fields. As Qinyu looked at him, the Taoist also looked up at him. His eyes were bright and sharp, like a meteor that cut across the horizon, bringing with it a brilliance that one couldn't look directly at. Then he placed a hand in front of him and bowed. Taoist faction's 39th generation disciple, Wuya, greets Dragon City Master. Qinyu frowned. He knew that this Taoist had misunderstood him, but there was no way to explain this. By borrowing the strength of the ancient's consciousness, his current aura was completely the same as before. Taoist, why are you blocking me? Wuya revealed a helpless expression. In truth, I also don't want to face the incomparably powerful Dragon City Master. But my Daoist faction was personally destroyed by you in the past. The Daoist faction suffered disastrous losses and nearly lost all of their teachings. If I didn't come today, I fear my spine would have been broken by the little Taoists of my sect. So, after hesitating again and again, I still came. Qin Yu expressed his understanding. Then, Taoist, are you preparing to kill me? Wu Yi nodded. I was prepared to do so, although attacking now is a bit like taking advantage of someone in a precarious situation. If I allow you to continue restoring your strength, I fear I won't have the courage to do so. Of course, even if you are in your weakest state right now, I still don't have the slightest confidence that I will die today. If that is the case, then I hope that you could be a bit more straightforward. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but although I have lived for many years, I still haven't recovered from my childhood fear of pain. Qin Yu nodded. Very well, I promise you. Hold on. Wu Yi had a constipated expression on his face, the wrinkles on his dark face nearly piling up together. For someone like you, don't you always say something like you overestimate yourself? I'll do this and that. I'll do this and that before you attack. Why are you so straightforward? I wanted to take a few more breaths of fresh air before I die while you were talking. Qin Yu, are you kidding me? Wu Yi awkwardly smiled. I've let you laugh at me. All right, I won't waste any more of your time. I'm going to make my move. This self-proclaimed little Taoist, Wu Yi, attacked, causing Qin Yu's heart to go cold. A ray of sword light pierced through space, so fast that he couldn't even see clearly how he had attacked, and the sword light was already right in front of him. Apart from its speed, this sword light did not seem to have any other merits. Its aura was ordinary and did not have a hint of sharpness. However, Qin Yu felt a great threat from this sword, and he didn't doubt that if he couldn't block it, this sword was enough to cut him in half from head to toe, and then explode into a pile of broken bones and rotten flesh. In terms of Qin Yu's cultivation, it could be said that the game of his life had already come to an end when facing this sword. Luckily, he was in a cheat-like state right now. By borrowing the power of the ancient's consciousness, he was able to clearly grasp the trajectory of this sword. As long as he could see it clearly, he should be able to block this sword. Thus, Qin Yu lifted his hand and grasped forwards. This simple movement instantly sucked in all the air between the heavens and earth. A violent sonic boom echoed out in all directions. Because space couldn't withstand this strength, a massive area began to collapse. That sword that pierced through space, that sword that was so fast that it had no friends, was directly grasped like this. Bang! A terrifying self-detonation occurred. But all of the strength was imprisoned between Qin Yu's fingers, without a single bit leaking out. And besides his palm being shaken and numb, he didn't feel any other discomfort. It was like he had released a loud but limited firecracker through his glove. Blood gushed out from every orifice of Wu Yi's head. Tears swelled in his eyes. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts too much. Hurry up and release me from this pain. Remember what you promised me. You had to be straightforward. Qin Yu pursed his lips and punched out. Dong! There was a deep and dull sound, like a leather drum being struck. Wu Yi was sent flying backwards, his chest deeply caved in. The light in his eyes rapidly faded, and there was a trace of joy on his face. It seemed that this person really was afraid of pain. Qin Yu shook his head. He didn't want to engage in senseless slaughter, but Wu Yi had a reason to attack, and it was impossible for him to be stopped here. Killing him was the only solution. Qin Yu didn't think too much about it. He continued forwards. But not long after, someone blocked his path again. This time it was a woman. Her figure was domineering and her style was bold. She wore a long red dress, revealing everything that should and shouldn't be revealed. The wind ruffled her dress, revealing her slender and fair thighs. All the way to the base of her thighs, the fragrance of makeup wafted through the air. If you appear here, that means that hateful old mongrel has already gone underground to eat dirt. Just how long has it been? The legendary Dragon City Master, even in his weakened state, still possesses such terrifying strength. It really makes my heart skip a beat." As she spoke, she winked at him. Qin Yu was expressionless. "Leave or die." The woman had a sad expression. "Am I not beautiful? You actually dared to say such cruel words." Qin Yu stepped forwards. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. A terrifying strength instantly arrived, rushing towards her from all directions like raging waves crashing against the shore. What was strange was that the woman didn't dodge and was directly sucked in. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with surprise, but he didn't hesitate to attack. His fingers clenched. Bang! The beautiful woman and her red dress were torn apart by a formidable strength. Her flesh and blood danced in the air, giving off a strange sense of beauty. But Qin Yu didn't leave. Instead, a dignified expression appeared on his face. In the next moment, the woman's helpless voice sounded out. "You really are a cruel man. You can even do something like this to me. You are so unromantic. You are destined to be lonely for the rest of your life." Space twisted, and the tyrannical woman in the red dress appeared. She lifted a hand and brushed her hair back. "Hey, you already killed me once. Don't you feel any guilt at all?" Qin Yu's eyes fell on the pile of minced meat. The smell of blood clearly wasn't an illusion. He looked at the lively woman in front of him, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He stepped forwards. With him, as the center, a terrifying strength recklessly spread outwards. Space collapsed inch by inch, and in the blink of an eye, everything within 100 miles was covered. "Found you." Qin Yu suddenly attacked. His finger thrust out like lightning. The expression of the woman in the red dress changed drastically. She clearly did not expect that her strongest technique would be so easily broken through. Bang! Her body violently exploded. A powerful strength rushed towards Qin Yu like a raging tide, trying to stop him from attacking. But she had clearly underestimated the strength of the ancient's consciousness. Even if she had only lent a small portion of it to Qin Yu, it still wasn't something she could contend with. Facing the explosive impact, Qin Yu didn't dodge at all. His finger shot out like an arrow, instantly piercing through her. There was a sudden scream. It was like countless needles were ruthlessly stabbing in her head and twisting about. Qin Yu's finger paused for a moment, but in the next moment, his speed suddenly accelerated. He deviated from his original position and pointed downwards. His fingertips felt a touch of softness and warmth. In the next moment, space rapidly swelled up like an inflated balloon. With a loud bang, space shattered and an exquisitely sewn rag doll appeared in Qin Yu's hand. Her features were picturesque, and she was tall. She wore a long red dress and looked exactly the same as the woman who had died twice in a row. At this time, the rag doll in Qin Yu's hand began to emit flames. These flames were a strange, deep red, like burning blood. They didn't emit any heat, only an endless chill. A layer of blood-red ice rapidly formed on the surface of Qin Yu's palm. Then it rapidly spread upwards. Humph! With a cold cough, Qin Yu's arm shook and the layer of ice instantly shattered. The blood-red flames on the ragdoll surface seemed to fall into a vacuum, quickly extinguishing. Its eyes turned and the sewn face became vivid. It looked at Qin Yu with fear and begged, "Dragon City Master, I know I was wrong. I only came here on orders. I hope that you can be magnanimous and spare me this time. In return, I am willing to follow you and serve you with my life." Qin Yu lightly said, "You abandoned your mortal body and cultivated this nearly undying and indestructible puppet body. I fear that the sins you have committed are innumerable. I don't need such a subordinate, so you should just accept the fate you deserve." He lifted his other hand and touched the point between the rag doll's eyebrows. With a light cracking sound, it was like something had broken inside. "No!" the rag doll screamed. Its beautiful face twisted and its bright eyes were filled with fear. Qin Yu released his hand and it turned to flee. But before it could fly too far, it emitted a miserable scream. Black smoke rose up from the rag doll, turning into resentful spirits that exuded resentment. They were all beautiful women, but the surface of these resentful spirits was covered with cracks, as if they had been torn apart countless times and then sewn back together. It was strange and horrifying. These resentful spirits bowed to Chinyu and then crazily threw themselves at the ragdoll. Heart-piercing screams filled the air, accompanied by the sound of cloth being torn apart. "Master, save me! Master, save me!" Chinyu looked up into the distance. 3 beams of light howled towards him, each one emitting a powerful aura that left one's heart racing. Shwa! The beams of light converged, revealing 3 figures that looked exactly the same. They wore brightly colored robes, and there was a red cinnabar between their eyebrows. They were handsome and exuded an enchanting charm. "You damage my doll. Even if you're the Dragon City Master, you must also die." Each person spoke. Their voices and tone were exactly the same, as if they were the same person. But they were indeed 3 independent cultivators. Chinyu couldn't have sensed this wrong. Thinking about it, these 3 people must have cultivated some cultivation method from the same origin. Thus they gave off such a strange feeling. The resentful spirits that were crazily tearing at the rag doll screamed and fled, as if they could feel a fatal threat. Humph! The 3 people coldly coughed. Bang! Bang! All of the resentful spirits exploded, turning into a massive black fog that covered the entire area. "You release them, then I will use their strength. I will kill you here." Chapter 783. Dark Parliament Headquarters. Along a long corridor, the 6 senators silently walked forwards. Their bodies, formed from flames, barely illuminated the surrounding darkness. After a moment, they stood in front of a giant stone door. Sage stopped and turned. "Have we still not contacted Senator Morningstar?" Jasmine shook her head. "I can't find his aura. It seems to be blocked by some strength." "Humph," Oriole sneered. "It's fine if he's usually so casual, but today this matter concerns the future of the Dark Parliament, and he's also absent. Morningstar has gone too far." The Dark Parliament had 7 senators, and each one was a unique existence. Without any one of them, the Dark Parliament would be incomplete. Sage lifted a hand. "Enough. Since things have come to this, there is no point in speaking further. Moreover, Senator Morningstar doesn't know that something like this would happen." He swept his eyes around. "With the 6 of us together, although we won't be able to display our greatest strength, we won't be too far off. And most importantly, it won't be just the Dark Parliament that will act today. We can join forces with other influences. As long as we can kill Ning Qin, we will have achieved our goal. Let's not delay any further. Let's begin." He turned and flicked his sleeves. The stone door quietly opened. Sage was the first to step in, with the other 5 senators following behind him. Several breaths of time later, there was a loud, rumbling sound from within the stone door, as if something heavy was being pushed aside and rubbing against each other. Shwa! A pair of giant eyes opened. They were dark and gloomy. This deathly still and icy cold aura seemed capable of freezing one's soul. 2 towering mountains pointed into the skies, their peaks sinking deep into the clouds. They were very close to each other, nearly blocking out all the light that sprinkled down. Thus, the abyss between the 2 mountains became increasingly dark, as if it were the entrance to hell. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew, blowing the thick trees and making a loud rustling sound. Who? White energy rose up from the abyss. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a thick fog. No matter how the wind howled, it wasn't able to move it in the least. This strange scene continued for a moment. Then, the darkness in the abyss began to tumble and tumble. A giant claw stretched out from within, easily piercing through the mountain rocks like tofu. Then, borrowing the strength to drag its massive body out from the darkness. The ferocious wolf head was covered in iron needle-like black fur. A long scar appeared on the hardest part of the skull. It started from the lower left corner of the eye and slanted upwards across the forehead to the root of the right ear. Its left eye was already blind, and a large part of its right ear had been cut off. The scar on its skull had yet to heal, even after tens of thousands of years of recuperation. This wound was left behind by the master it had once served many, many years ago. It thought that it would be the last time it saw its master, but now he was back. The one-eyed, earless black wolf was unwilling to believe it, but the trembling in his heart could not be wrong. That was the aura of his master. Looking back at the abyss that he had lived in for hundreds of thousands of years, Black Wolf could not help but wonder if his choice to betray was a mistake. But this thought was destined to not be answered. The Black Wolf leaped, and a white fog floating above the abyss landed under its feet. It carried it directly into the space and disappeared in the violent fluctuations. The great river crashed down from high above, tearing apart the mountain peaks and forming many strange and precipitous mountain peaks. A dilapidated, thatched hut was built near the river. If one sat in front of the hut, they could feel the moist air blowing against their faces. The straw mat on the roof was mostly in tatters. If a strong wind blew past, it was likely that it would be sent flying into the roaring river and instantly torn to pieces. But it had already stood here for many, many years, so long that no one remembered when it had first appeared. In this lonely thatched hut lived a lonely old woman. She always combed her white hair neatly and wore a cotton dress that seemed as if it would never be changed. Every morning the old woman would leave the house punctually. She would hold a fishing rod in her hand and cast a hook into the river. When a fish took the bait, the old woman would raise the fishing rod and light a fire to cook. A single fish was her daily rations. No matter how big or small it was, she would never fish a second time. In the distance, there were figures on several steep peaks. Each cultivator had their eyes wide open, waiting for the old woman to open the door and fish. They didn't know the old woman's identity, nor did they know why she lived here. But there was one thing they were certain of. This common-looking old woman that didn't have any fluctuations of strength around her was a true supreme being. There were powerhouses that tried to probe her, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't approach the lonely peak. That mountain, that person was clearly in front of them, but it seemed as if they were separated by endless rivers and mountains, as if they existed in another space. She came out. With a suppressed shout, the door to the thatched hut opened from the inside. An old woman with neat white hair walked out, holding a fishing rod in her hand. She ignored the awe and curiosity of everyone around her. She walked to the cliff and sat down. Then, she cast the hook into the river. Rumble, rumble. The great river surged forwards. The old woman, sitting on the riverbank, seemed particularly small. But at this moment, all the cultivators' eyes were focused on her, their eyes filled with fascination and fascination. Fishing was dull and boring, but in their eyes, it seemed to contain the charm of the great Tao, causing countless lights to burst out in their minds. I've understood. I've finally understood. A cultivator cried out, his face filled with ecstasy. He stood up and bowed towards the old woman. I thank Senior for all your guidance over the years. This junior will never forget this for the rest of his life. The old woman, who had always been indifferent to everyone, turned around and nodded. The cultivator was immediately overwhelmed by the favor. But before he could speak again, the motionless old woman suddenly lifted the fishing rod. Bang! The river water exploded. The vast and mighty river seemed to be cut off from the middle. An incomparably massive shadow was pulled out of the water. It had the head of a cow, but the body of a fish. There were sharp claws under its abdomen, and its tail was like a scorpion's. With a low moo, the monster beast was thrown ashore. Its eyes were filled with panic, but it didn't dare to run away. It lay there, its body shivering. The old woman put down the fishing rod and lightly said, "You have borrowed my aura to cultivate here for 10,000 years. Today, you will be my mount. Once we reach our destination, I will naturally let you go." She took a step forwards and flew onto the monster beast's back. She underwent an astonishing transformation in midair, as if time had reversed. In a single breath of time, the old woman turned into a young woman in her 20s. The only thing that didn't change was the clothes she wore. They were still gray and inconspicuous. As she stood on the monster beast's back, the wind swirled around her long hair. At this moment, All the cultivators were left dumbfounded, as if they were looking at a goddess that would ascend to the heavens. Moo! With a deep roar, the monster leapt into the river. Carrying the woman on its back, it drilled into the river bed and disappeared. A massive shadow came from the distance. Wherever it passed, the world fell into darkness, as if yin and yang had been reversed. The surrounding aura tumbled endlessly, like a pot of boiled porridge, isolating itself from the outside world. Another figure with a blurry face, wrapped in dense holy light, came from the direction of the west tomb. Heaven and earth's spiritual strength gathered around him, condensing into tiny holy spirits that surrounded him, praising him and prostrating themselves at his side. In the extreme north, in a world of ice and snow all year round, there was a young man who wore thick bee skins and had a body as strong as an iron tower. He carried a long spear on his back as he walked forwards. His expression was firm and his eyes seemed solid. It was like even if the world collapsed, his mind wouldn't be shaken. One after another, powerhouses that stood at the peak of the world began to gather from all directions. Because of various reasons, none of them hoped that the Dragon City Master would be able to resurrect. Thus, they wanted to kill him when he was at his weakest. Winds rose and clouds gathered. A grand momentum that would sweep through the world was rapidly taking shape. If Qin Yu could have predicted this, would he have regretted helping the Hidden Fog sect and falling into such a dangerous situation? Of course, this was only an assumption. With Qin Yu's current weak understanding of the Tao of time, it would be countless years before he could reverse time. But he had to survive the present. If he were to be killed here, there would be no future and everything would come to nothing. The black fog loudly shattered. The three men that looked exactly the same, each of them saying a single sentence, each with a clear division of labor and perfect coordination, all of the light in their eyes faded away. They were like three statues that had lost all aura of life. They fell from the skies. Their bodies were like stones that had been weathered for countless years. They rapidly turned into powder that dissipated in the wind. Qin Yu stepped forwards, his eyebrows furrowed together. He felt that something wasn't right. Whether it was Taoist, Wuya, the beautiful doll, or even the most fierce of these three cultivators, they couldn't even withstand a single blow from Qin Yu. Was this the Dark Parliament's response to him breaking off relations with them? It was like they were delivering their heads to him. If this was true, then it would be a joke. No, something was very wrong. Qin Yu's frown deepened. He thought of a possibility, and that was that these cultivators that came to die were stalling for time while the Dark Parliament prepared their true methods. As soon as he thought of this, Qin Yu stepped forwards. Space rumbled and collapsed, forming a giant black hole. A space channel formed, and he stepped into it. But the moment he entered, a sense of foreboding rose up in his mind. Before Qin Yu could think of anything else, his body instinctively attacked. He punched out. In the next moment, the space channel was torn apart. This was an incomparably massive claw that shined with a metallic light. Fist and claw collided. A powerful shaking strength rushed forwards. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, but he didn't take half a step back. Forcefully resisting the shaking strength, he took a step forwards. He raised his hand and clenched his fingers, ruthlessly grasping at the sharp claw. "Come out from me." With a deep roar, he forcefully pulled backwards. The black wolf's massive body smashed through the space channel and appeared. In its single eye, a trace of fear and panic flashed. But in the next moment, it turned into a cruel madness. Roar! With a roar, a terrifying aura erupted. The phantom of a winged heavenly wolf appeared behind the black wolf, its pitch-black eyes locked onto Qin Yu. A formidable, swallowing strength instantly erupted from the heavenly wolf phantom. It directly affected the soul, wanting to pull it out and swallow it. Qin Yu remained expressionless. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. In that instant, there was a thunderous roar. Even in the turbulent flows of space, one could feel the vast and boundless potential. Blue point first finger, boundless, boundless. With a single finger, the boundless heavens and earth swept out in all directions. With the strength of the ancients' consciousness attacking, this supernatural power erupted with a terrifying might that surpassed one's imagination. The black wolf arched his back, his black fur standing on end. His single eye revealed a look of fear. With a deep roar, rich black energy gushed out from his body, weaving together into a thick layer. In the next moment, the howling finger struck the black energy. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, a massive mass of black energy was blown apart, tumbling and dissipating in the air. One could faintly see the black wolf's shivering figure. It was clear that even though it had blocked this finger, it had paid a certain price. But even now, the heavenly wolf phantom's swallowing strength towards Qin Yu's soul hadn't weakened in the least. Damn it! If you don't do anything, then I can only run away. The black wolf spat out, his voice filled with hate. He was well aware that the first one to attack would eventually be used as a chess piece. But after feeling Qin Yu's aura, the fear and anxiety in his heart made it so that he couldn't wait any longer. The only good news was that everyone's judgment was correct. Although his master had resurrected, he was in an extremely weak state. Otherwise, with his master's cultivation, if he were in his peak state, he would only need a single finger to crush him to death. Now was the best and only chance to kill him. He absolutely couldn't miss this chance. The existence hidden in the shadows had clearly made a similar judgment. So, not long after the black wolf roared, a radiant light appeared. It condensed into a single point, piercing through the turbulent flows of space and locking onto Qin Yu's eyes. It was tyrannical and overbearing, and there was also a tragic momentum to it. One could hear the howls and howls of countless departed souls, filled with hatred and fear. These were the living beings that had been killed by this light, the gathering of their everlasting resentment. But this didn't affect the one who attacked at all. Instead, it added an even more terrifying might to this strike. Chapter 784. Qin Yu frowned. He lifted a hand and thrust out a second finger. After this finger fell, figures began to appear in the turbulent space. There were humans, monster beasts, and even some broken and incomplete shadows that were filled with unwillingness. These were lingering obsessions that wouldn't scatter even after death. Now that they were drawn over by this finger, they rapidly fused into the finger shadow. Their color rapidly darkened, like a thick cumulus cloud before a torrential downpour. The second finger, blue spirit finger. This was to summon the undying obsessions of the world for one's own use. The radiant light on the surface of the black vault of heaven instantly disintegrated. The spear shaft withstood the impact of the strength and violently trembled. It stopped in midair, as if it were being suppressed by an invisible strength, but also as if it were struggling to resist something. At the end of the spear, a spear-wielding young man appeared. The thick beast hide covering his body was shattered by the powerful strength, revealing his bare upper body. Large and small scars covered nearly every inch of his flesh and blood. At this time, as his blood vitality boiled, the scars rapidly turned crimson red, like blood-sucking insects crawling over his body. His heart violently beat. The low and deep sound carried with it a strength that penetrated into the heart, causing one's mind to tremble. Although he withstood a horrifying pressure, this man from the northern frontier still stood tall and straight. He was like a cedar that grew in a world of ice and snow, not bending in the least no matter how much snow covered him. Qin Yu looked at the bare-chested young man. His eyes flashed. "You come from the Dark Parliament?" He slowly shook his head. "I come from the northern frontier." Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He didn't know where the northern frontier was or what influence it represented, but there was one thing he was sure of. Those that tried to kill him today weren't all from the Dark Parliament. Or, it was more accurate to say that the Dark Parliament was only one of the influences. Through the information he had gathered before, it wasn't hard for Qin Yu to judge that the reason these people attacked him was because they saw him as the Dragon City Master. In other words, Qin Yu had suffered an undeserved calamity. He had been schemed against by the Ancient. Although he didn't know what his goal was, he was well aware of the consequences of Qin Yu borrowing his strength. But even if he was schemed against, Qin Yu didn't have anything to complain about. This was because this was something he had requested to begin with. If it weren't for helping the Hidden Fog sect, he wouldn't have needed to do anything, and he wouldn't have been placed in his current situation. Sure enough, being a good person was not an easy task. But thinking about it from another angle, even if Qin Yu didn't do anything and the Dark Parliament tore up the agreement, in order to protect himself, he feared that in the end he would have to borrow the strength of the Ancient's will. It was only a matter of time. Shaking his head, Zhang Xian suppressed his thoughts. There was no point in thinking about it now. No matter what the Ancient wanted to do, for the time being, Qin Yu could only follow its prescribed script. However, even though Black Wolf and the man from the northern border were powerful, they could only temporarily restrain him. It was impossible for them to kill him. It seemed like there were still people watching in the dark. Otherwise, how could Black Wolf and this man dare to attack him? As Qin Yu's thoughts raced here, a massive black shadow appeared in the turbulent space flows. It was so large that it seemed to cover all. Darkness descended like an eternal night. And in this darkness, Qin Yu could clearly feel the boiling strength around him, gradually cutting off his connection to the outside world, isolating him and isolating him. This was an extremely frightening matter. To a true peak powerhouse, they could summon a phenomenon of the world with just a thought and manipulate the strength of the world for their own use. With just a lift of their hand, they could erupt with dreadful might. If their connection to the outside world was cut off, that meant that they could only use their own strength to attack. Not only did this mean that their consumption of strength would rise, but it would also greatly reduce the power of their attack. It was the same as cutting off a cultivator's arm. Qin Yu's complexion darkened, starting from Black Wolf, then the spear-wielding youth from the northern border, and finally this strange black shadow. Although they erupted with a formidable strength, they didn't seem to have any desire to directly kill him. Or, it was more accurate to say that all of these people had chosen to constantly hinder him and weaken his strength. They were all waiting for the person who could truly kill Qin Yu to attack. That person must be here, waiting for the best opportunity to strike. Qin Yu's heart chilled, but he wasn't too afraid. No matter what the Ancient's goal was, they wouldn't want him to die. Since they had intentionally led this situation to this point, they should have a way to resolve it. Suddenly, a new change occurred. In the deep darkness, a ray of light suddenly squeezed in. It illuminated the surroundings and sprinkled down a warm and auspicious aura. His face was blurry, and his entire body was wrapped in a rich holy light. He was surrounded by countless knuckle-sized holy spirits, all of them devout and joyful as they sang praises to him. With just a glance, Qin Yu could determine that this figure wrapped in holy light was a powerhouse from the Western Tomb Divine Church. He wasn't Ji Xiangtian, but his aura wasn't weak at all. Moreover, because of his pious beliefs, he could erupt with an even greater strength. The Western Tomb Divine Church's judicial department's chief seat executed all those who blasphemed heresy. Even if they fell into eternal hell, they still wouldn't allow anyone to show disrespect to him. At this time, the chief seat of the Western Tomb Divine Church attacked. He lifted a hand, and a great sun descended. A terrifying, annihilating aura erupted. All heresy should die. Judgment of light. Bang! A great sun descended. It was like a true sun, releasing an astonishing heat as it smashed down on Qin Yu. Seeing the judgment of light howl towards him, the holy light within Qin Yu's body that was covered in blood vitality began to stir. As he thought about how he still had the status of the Western Tomb Divine Church's Saint's son, he couldn't help but feel a bit strange. But strange was just strange. Qin Yu didn't believe that just because he had the power of holy light in his body, he would turn hostility into friendship. He feared that this crazy chief seat of the Western Tomb Divine Church would believe that he was blaspheming against the gods and recklessly try to kill him. Qin Yu lifted a hand and thrust out his third finger today, the blue sea finger. This finger could change the world and reverse the momentum of the world. In terms of absolute power, it was far above the blue spirit finger and blue expanse finger. Rumble, rumble. Turbulent flows of space began to boil. Endless spiritual strength rumbled within, weaving together to form a magnificent picture scroll. Deep in the sea, a rock suddenly rose up from the seabed, piercing through the surface and growing until it finally turned into a giant mountain peak. Seawater surged in all directions, washing out canyons and rivers. The roaring seawater rushed out in all directions. There was also a stretch of mountain ranges. The mountain peaks shattered and collapsed amidst the tremors. Then, the ground cracked open and sank continuously. Countless streams of water gathered, starting from a large lake and gradually turning into a boundless ocean. Cities turned into ruins, and barren lands became densely populated. Giant beasts that lived in a certain era, because they couldn't adapt to the rapid changes in climate, rapidly went extinct, becoming fossils buried deep underground. Then, new species were born, replacing the position of the giant beasts and becoming the new rulers of the world. To a certain extent, this could also be regarded as the power of time. The endless changes of the years were what caused the world to change into a mulberry field. Thus, within Qin Yu's body, the Tao of time that couldn't even be considered the slightest bit was quietly activated. This sort of passive activation wasn't something that Qin Yu actively used, so it didn't consume any of his energy. In fact, he didn't even notice this. But no matter how weak the Tao of time was, it was still a strength that stood at the peak of the world. After fusing into the blue expanse finger, it immediately underwent a fundamental change. At this moment, everyone could clearly hear the sound of a clock ticking in their ears. Tick, tick, tick. This was the flow of time. The Western tomb chief judgment's complexion changed. Although he had never come into contact with the power of time, he could still feel the power contained within this finger. Even so, he didn't take half a step backwards. Instead, the aura of the light judgment rose once more. As a fanatic believer, in order to defend the ruler he believed in, he could give up his own life without hesitation. Rumble, rumble. There was a heaven-shaking explosion. The judgment chief judgment stuffily coughed, and the sacred spirits flying around him shattered and dispersed. The fine wrinkles on his face suddenly deepened, and a turbid color appeared in his bright and firm eyes. The great sun manifested from the judgment of light shattered, but it did not disappear. Instead, every piece of it floated in midair. As the holy light filled the air, more holy spirits condensed, and the singing of praise became even louder. The judgment chief judgment was excited. He fell to his knees and deeply bowed his head. Lowly servant, I welcome your arrival. The holy light gathered to form a perfect figure. She had a pair of slender legs, a slender waist, and a perfectly shaped chest. Her face was blurry, but her eyes were particularly clear. They were transparent and bright, like a curved lake beneath the moonlight. She was gentle and affectionate, but also indifferent. Her eyes fell on the judgment chief judgment, and she lifted a finger. As this finger fell, the judgment chief judgment's weak aura rapidly recovered. In the blink of an eye, he returned to his peak state and continued to rise. The wrinkles on his face and the turbidity in his eyes rapidly disappeared. The judgment chief judgment felt that his condition was better than ever. Even the hidden wounds left behind by the elimination of heresy were directly dispelled and healed by this warm strength. His expression became even more devout. His hands formed the seal of the Western tomb, and he respectfully kowtowed. Thank you for your benevolence. The woman's voice was soft and gentle, carrying with it a trace of warmth that quietly seeped into his soul. This is the repayment you deserve, devout believer of the Tao Monarch. I, Dorlis, the Tao Monarch's #1 messenger, have accepted your summons and descended to eliminate all evil heretics. The judgment chief judgment excitedly roared out. Only the Tao Monarch lives forever. Dorlis looked at Qin Yu. A fluctuation flashed in her eyes, but beneath the cover of the holy light, no one noticed it. She took a step forward and raised her hand, pressing it down as she loudly chanted. Chapter 785. Every time Dorley spoke, Qin Yu's body confirmed something. He felt his soul suddenly fall into darkness, and his body crazily fall, as if he were about to fall into the endless yellow springs of hell. His conscious mind could feel the cold winds around him, constantly cutting him like tiny ice blades. He instinctively wanted to struggle, but discovered that he couldn't do anything at all. This was because the strength of the world itself was suppressing him, forcing him to obediently wait for death to arrive. Of course, this feeling only lasted for a short period of time. After Dorelis's voice fell, Qin Yu blinked his eyes, and all the pain faded away like a tide. Then, a trace of anger gushed out from his chest, igniting all the blood in his body like a raging flame. This was the self-confidence and pride of the ancient race. After being provoked and humiliated, this was an instinctive eruption. Qin Yu didn't suppress his anger. So, he opened his mouth and roared. Rumble, rumble, rumble like thunder. The phantom of a giant appeared behind him and smashed down with its hands. Just as this fist came out, the turbulent space around him completely rioted. Across from him, the beautiful Dorlise gently frowned. She spread out her arms, and 12 beautiful white wings spread out in 2 rows. The feathers on the surface of each wing emitted a holy light so rich that it nearly condensed into essence. Radiant protection. The giant phantom smashed down with its fist. The radiant protection fiercely trembled. Cracks quietly appeared on its surface, spreading outwards. Dorelis's 12 wings gently trembled as if she were withstanding a tremendous pressure. But her eyes remained calm, just a bit more dignified than before. She seemed to have underestimated the strength within this little fellow's body. Although this strength didn't belong to him, he could still rely on his body to erupt with such a formidable might. Besides his ability to perceive the path of time, was his bloodline also so formidable? If so, then he really was an enviable young boy. The giant phantom dissipated. Every inch of the radiant protection that was covered in cracks still managed to persist. In truth, this was within Qin Yu's expectations. After all, the source of the radiant protection was the Tao monarch. As long as he didn't die, the radiant protection wouldn't shatter unless he instantly withstood an attack that surpassed the Tao monarch's strength. As Qin Yu looked at the summoned Dorlise, his eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. It seemed as if Dorlise had barely managed to withstand that strike just now, but he could faintly feel that this woman had held back a great deal of her strength. She could erupt with an even greater strength. Why did he have to hide his strength? The Tao monarch's emissary was an absolute mortal enemy of the ancient. Perhaps he was preparing to deal a fatal blow at a critical moment, or perhaps he had other plans in mind. Qin Yu remained vigilant. After Dorlise attacked, a puppet appeared in his line of sight. Its body was covered with scars, and its chest was even cut open by a sharp weapon, revealing the dark golden material within. The puppet's body was not protected by any energy, so it was directly exposed to the turbulent flow of space. No matter how much the violent spatial energy raged, it was unable to leave a single mark on its body. Qin Yu sensed a familiar aura from this puppet. It was the aura of the Dark Parliament. He had come into contact with philosopher Jasmine Moonshadow and that paranoid woman called Oriole. Sure enough, the Dark Parliament was going all out. This puppet required several counselors to work together to activate, so it should be their greatest trump card. Qin Yu could indeed sense a powerful threat from it. The Black Wolf, the spear-wielding youth from the northern border, the Western Tomb's chief seat of judgment, as well as the projection of the Tao monarch's emissary Dorlise that he summoned, and now this terrifying puppet was added to the mix. Wasn't the ancient afraid that things would go too far and cause him to die here? My lord, we meet again. Philosopher's voice sounded out from the puppet's mouth. Chinyu remained expressionless. Are you trying to persuade me to resign myself to death? The puppet shook its head. Of course not. With my lord's strength, even if all sides gather here today, being able to barely kill you is already the best possible result. In fact, I even worry that if you escape, we will be met with a calamity in the future. After a brief pause, it continued to say, So, I ask that you must die here today. Chinyu lightly said, That depends on whether or not you can do it. The puppet didn't speak again. Its feet moved, and it instantly rushed forwards. Because it was too fast, it left behind a series of afterimages. Wherever it went, the turbulent space would be torn apart and pierced through, forming a straight channel that led straight towards Chinyu. A black fist smashed towards Chinyu's face. Before it arrived, the turbulent space behind it had already collapsed. Chinyu instantly attacked. His flesh and blood body collided with the puppet. There was a series of explosive sounds as both sides exchanged countless punches in a single breath of time. With a loud bang, the two sides instantly separated. There were several shallow fist marks on the puppet's chest, and Chinyu's face was a bit pale. The puppet didn't attack again. Its gray eyes that were filled with deathly stillness locked onto Chinyu. You are truly worthy of being the legendary Dragon City Master. The tyrannical degree of your mortal body is astonishing. Even after being weakened and suppressed multiple times, you still haven't fallen into a disadvantage. Chinyu said in a low voice, Since you speak so calmly, you must have a backup plan. Is it the Dark Parliament's hidden strength, or is it someone else? The puppet bowed. This is the strongest strength that the Dark Parliament can bring out. But it clearly isn't enough to kill you. It turned and looked deep into the turbulent space. With the situation having reached this step, are you still not prepared to make a move? Moo! With a deep roar from deep within the turbulent space, a monster beast with the head of a cow, the body of a fish, the claws of a dragon, and the tail of a scorpion appeared. Its scales emitted a faint light as it swam through the turbulent space, as if it were swimming in water. The monster beast's giant eyes were filled with fear. It was clear that although it had the talent to pass through the turbulent space, coming here wasn't its original intention. On the back of the demonic beast stood a beautiful woman. She was about 20 years old and wore a plain cotton dress. It was dusty and unremarkable, but it was incomparably smooth on her body. Instead, it accentuated her extraordinary temperament. At this time, the woman's eyes fell on Chinyu. There was a complex look in the depths of her eyes, as if there were tens of thousands of words she couldn't say. Taking a deep breath, the woman lowered her head and patted the monster beast's head. She said in a soft voice, This place is dangerous. Hurry and leave. With a step, the monster beast flew down from its back. With a deep roar of gratitude, it turned and left, soon disappearing from sight. What nonsense! If it didn't run away now, did it want to stay here and wait for death? Anyone the cultivators here could easily kill it. Even if it had the talent to pass through space, it still wouldn't be able to escape. This was because these people were all ruthless characters that could cross the turbulent space, and their cultivations were transcendent. After the monster beast left, the turbulent space fell into a brief silence. Everyone looked at the woman, as if they all knew who she was. These gazes more or less revealed anticipation. Thus, Chinyu came to the conclusion that this woman was the strongest enemy he needed to face today. But the development of events surpassed Chinyu's expectations. This woman that everyone was filled with anticipation actually slowly knelt down, her expression respectful. Sunset greets master. The black wolf bared his teeth. The heavenly wolf phantom behind him roared. Just what was this silly woman doing? Did she think that the person in front of her was the same master that had been gentle and kind to her in the past? Sunset, since you have done what you did in the past, there is no turning back. Don't delay any longer, lest something unexpected happen. Sunset didn't even glance at the black wolf. She maintained her kneeling posture and respectfully said, In the past, I had my own difficulties that forced me to rebel. Now, there is no need to argue about who was right and who was wrong. But I still regard you as my only master. I once fantasized that master could return from the dead, but you once mentioned how difficult this would be, so I didn't have too much hope for it. I never thought that the heavens would take pity on you and actually allow you to resurrect. As long as you agree to abandon your cultivation, I will bring you away from here today and serve you for the rest of your life. I hope that master can seriously consider my proposal. I do not wish to kill you a second time, because that would be a great pain to me. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He never thought that he would be robbed and killed, but he would also have to face such a melodramatic play. Listening to this woman's words, it seemed that she still had feelings for the ancient. Qin Yu didn't know how to deal with this matter. After all, it involved the ancient's consciousness, so it wasn't good to say too much or too little. Thus, he chose to remain silent. And this silence, in Sunset's eyes, clearly indicated his attitude. A look of sorrow immediately appeared on her beautiful face. Master, you aren't even willing to say a single word to me? Tears flowed down her cheeks. This wasn't an act. Everyone could clearly feel her sorrow from the inside out. While they despised this woman's brain for being broken, they also secretly rejoiced that the Dragon City Master had directly refused. Otherwise, even if he had to abandon his cultivation, they still wouldn't have dared to let him leave. After all, even if his body and soul were destroyed, they still couldn't stop the Dragon City Master from resurrecting. Sunset stood up. Her eyes were still hazy with tears, but her expression gradually revealed a firm determination. Master, since you have already made your choice, then allow me to personally send you on your way. She paused for a moment and then continued to say, after you die, I will choose to commit suicide and accompany you in the underworld. This is my promise to you. She lifted a hand. Light surged between her fingers and a fishing rod appeared. It looked very ordinary, but because it had been used too many times, there was a layer of glossy paste on its surface. Her slender and fair fingers clenched together. Tiny blue veins bulged out, indicating that her inner emotions were far from being as calm as she appeared. She lifted her hand, and the fishing hook howled out. But there was no great river here, so where would the hook fall? Her eyes involuntarily followed it. She watched as the hook fell into the turbulent flows of space and disappeared. Qin Yu didn't know what she was doing, but he could faintly sense the excited emotions of the Dark Parliament's puppets and the others. His intuition told him that it was best to immediately break free from his imprisonment. Otherwise, even if he borrowed the strength of the ancient's consciousness, there was a chance he would be killed here. But the surrounding assassins were already prepared. They erupted with their strongest strength, desperately blocking Qin Yu's counterattack. Chapter 786. Twilight froze. She slowly turned to look at Qin Yu, hoping to see a change in his expression. But, in the end, nothing happened. However, this was the true master in her heart. He was an indomitable spirit who possessed the strength to look down on the heavens, and no pressure could make him bow his head. If her master had endured humiliation to survive, then perhaps she would have been truly disappointed. She really was a contradictory woman. No wonder, no matter how hard she tried in the past, she couldn't obtain her master's attention. Luckily, she would soon follow her master and die, so there would be no need to continue this contradiction. She pulled hard. The fishing rod bent under the force, and the ringing of the bell became even more intense. The fishing line hummed and trembled, emitting a faint and rapid sound. Twilight muttered, "It looks like my luck isn't bad this time. I managed to fish up a fierce fellow. Now come out." Bang! The turbulent space current shattered. Through the tumbling fragments, one could see the black hole below. The fishing hook was rapidly retracting from it, and at the end of the hook, there was a broken saber stuck to it. The surface was covered in rust, as if it had been buried in a dark and damp place for many years. The fishing hook was straight without any possibility of being hooked. But the broken saber was tightly stuck to it, as if it were attracted by a giant magnet. Twilight frowned as her eyes fell on the broken saber. Then, she composed herself and turned to look at the crowd. "You are all well aware of my abilities. I have already done what I can. As for whether or not you can kill my master, that will depend on your own strength." She put away the fishing rod. The broken saber floated in the turbulent space currents, not leaking out the least bit of its aura. It was simply shabby to the extreme. But at this time, everyone looked at this broken saber with dignified expressions. Regardless of whether or not they could see through the depths of this broken saber, Twilight's supernatural ability to fish up the heavens had never been wrong. Since she had fished up this broken saber today, it proved that it possessed the strength to truly kill the Dragon City Master. No one dared to underestimate it. The giant black wolf that maintained the heavenly wolf phantom and restrained Qi Ning's soul hesitated for a moment. Then, a cruel light flashed in its eyes. "I'll do it." For hundreds of thousands of years, the fear of its master had remained in its heart. The passage of time hadn't been able to wash away this fear. Instead, it had become even deeper, shrouding its mind and blocking out all light and warmth. The black wolf was well aware that it was because of this fear that it hadn't been able to heal its wounds even after hundreds of thousands of years. Even its cultivation hadn't improved at all. If it couldn't break through this fear, it would forever remain like this. And without a doubt, the best solution was to personally kill its master. If it could do so, it would be able to break through this demon. Therefore, after a brief moment of hesitation, Black Wolf chose to attack. The silhouette of the celestial wolf remained unchanged as it walked toward the floating broken blade. A dense demonic light flashed, and the black wolf disappeared. A one-eyed man appeared in front of them. There was a hideous scar on his head, and there was no hair around it. Looking at the scar, one could vaguely see the white skull. The black wolf took A. During his body and his head he and took. He black. He. The process of picking up the saber was a test for Black Wolf. He was not sure if he had the courage to kill his master. Heaven he at. As the end, he at him, and he on he. As long as he could kill him, everything would come to an end, and he would be able to welcome a new life. Lifting the broken saber, Black Wolf's heart filled with killing intent. This killing intent seemed to activate the rusted broken saber. The blade trembled and then completely erupted. Bang! A scarlet mist mixed with rust gushed out. When it gathered together, it looked like a giant furry fox's tail. This tail took root in the broken saber and wildly danced in the turbulent space. Everyone's noses and mouths were flooded with the smell of blood. With just a single breath, they could hear countless mournful wails. These sounds were the miserable screams of countless lives fused together, reaching deep into the soul and giving rise to an endless chill. Almost everyone felt their hair stand on end. As they looked at the broken saber, they subconsciously revealed shock and fear. Such a thick killing intent was able to affect their minds. Just how many lives did it take to condense it? Thinking about it, it must be an astronomical number. Without giving everyone more time to be shocked, Black Wolf, who was holding the broken saber, suddenly screamed out in pain. Red lines grew out from the saber hilt, like fine roots that drilled into his hand. At this time, these red lines constantly expanded and contracted, emitting gudong sounds. It was like someone that had been starving for a long time was eating and drinking in great gulps. This broken saber was currently stealing Black Wolf's strength. Moreover, it seemed that Black Wolf didn't have the ability to resist at all. If he wasn't interrupted, it was foreseeable that Black Wolf would soon be sucked dry. For a time, everyone rejoiced that they hadn't done anything just now. Otherwise, the ones to have their strength stolen would have been them. They didn't have any friendship with Black Wolf, and if the situation were different, they would be more than happy to watch him be killed and then skin him alive to collect materials. After all, for a monster beast on the level of Black Wolf, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that its entire body was a treasure. If it was refined, it could become all sorts of powerful treasures. But not today. Although the Dragon City Master was still in a suppressed state, no one dared to say that without Black Wolf's restriction, he wouldn't be able to escape. No one dared to take such a risk. The Chief Monk of Judgment was the first to make a move. If there was a ranking of those who wanted to kill Dragon City Master the most, he was definitely a strong contender. He raised his hand, and a white holy light bloomed, blasting straight at the broken saber. Against the violent and destructive power of killing, the holy light naturally had a suppressive attribute. As expected, when the holy light fell, the terrifying aura released by the broken saber stopped for a moment. Black Wolf frantically erupted his strength, trying to take the opportunity to break free from the broken saber. Unfortunately, this pause only lasted for a very short time. Then, Black Wolf's screams were a few levels higher than before, and his body violently twitched. Those red lines that drilled into his body crazily invaded the depths of his flesh and blood. At the same time, the holy light entwined on the surface of the broken saber was rapidly reduced, and it was being rapidly devoured by the broken saber. The Chief Monk of Judgment's expression changed, because in the void in front of him, a large number of red lines drilled out and directly pounced on him. These red lines were exactly the same as those that drilled into Black Wolf's body. It could actually trace the source of the power and directly attack. Holy light suddenly erupted, but these red lines weren't affected at all. They pierced through like phantoms, falling into the Chief Monk of Judgment's hand and rapidly drilling into his flesh and blood. Dorlice moved. Her palm fell on the Chief Monk of Judgment's back, and the red lines that drilled into his body screamed and quickly retreated. One could clearly see that on the surface of the brightly colored red lines, there were burn marks. "Thank you for your help." The Chief Monk of Judgment respectfully bowed, his face pale with fear. Although he was a fanatic believer, he was also a normal cultivator. After experiencing what just happened, he would naturally feel fear. In particular, the red lines had already drilled into his body. The Chief Monk of Judgment could feel the pain that Black Wolf was suffering. Even if it was less than a tenth of Black Wolf's pain, it was enough to make him feel as if his heart had fallen into an icy lake. He looked at Black Wolf with pity in his eyes. Dorlice had a dignified expression. Although her attack just now seemed simple, it had consumed nearly half of the projection strength. Even so, she could only expel the red lines. She couldn't even cause any substantial damage to them. The origin of this broken saber was likely greater than she imagined. Its master was absolutely a transcendent existence, no weaker than a Tao monarch. But since this broken saber was fished up by sunset shadow, that meant that its master had already perished. Such an existence, although seemingly immortal, would still die. This caused the hope in Dorlice's heart to brighten. Of course, she had to hide this hope. Before she achieved it, she absolutely couldn't let anyone know of it. The turbulent space fell into a brief silence. Even the Western Tomb's holy light had been swallowed up. If they were in her place, they feared they would suffer the same fate. They might even be chased down by the red lines. Without the help of a spiritual god's projection, it was likely they would die. Perhaps this was fate. Black Wolf was doomed to die today. In the silence, the puppet suddenly said, "Let's give it a try." Sage's voice was calm. It had clearly obtained the approval of the other counselors. No one objected. It rushed through the turbulent space and arrived beside Black Wolf. As if sensing an aura approaching, the humming of the broken saber suddenly rose up. Schwa, massive red lines drilled out, instantly wrapping around the puppet. They crazily drilled in, wanting to find a channel to invade the inside. But unfortunately, no matter how hard the red lines tried, they couldn't find a single flaw in the puppet. Although it was covered in scars, as if it had experienced countless battles, it was still an independent entity, completely isolated from the outside world. The puppet reached out a hand and grabbed the back of the broken saber. Because of the rust, Sage could clearly feel the roughness of the puppet's palm. It was clearly an ordinary feeling, but at this moment, all 6 counselors, including Sage, simultaneously felt an extremely terrifying aura. It was like they were standing at the edge of an abyss, able to fall in at any moment and die a horrible death. The 6 counselors believed without hesitation that if it weren't for the puppet isolating them, they would have died the moment they touched the back of the saber. Just what sort of saber was this? Even after being cut in half, it still possessed such terrifying might. Taking a deep breath, Sage steadied his mind. His consciousness controlled the puppet to slowly pull out the broken saber from Black Wolf's twitching hand. The moment the saber left Black Wolf's palm, all the blood-red lines rapidly retracted. Black Wolf had a look of panic as he turned and fled. In just a short period of time, he had become much thinner, almost as if he were a bag of bones. At this moment, no one laughed at his cowardice or fear, because if it were anyone else, they would have suffered the same fate. In the face of death, all life was equal. The more powerful an existence was, the more they feared death. Luckily, they had the Dark Parliament's puppet. Otherwise, even if they obtained this killing saber, they would still be helpless against it. Grasping the broken saber, countless red lines wrapped around the puppet's body, making it so that not even a drop of water could be seen. After a long time, the broken saber emitted a low hum, and all the red lines retreated. The terrifying fog that resembled a giant fox tail also dissipated. The puppet casually moved a few times. The broken saber cut through the void. Even in the turbulent space flows, it was still able to cut out black marks. The turbulent space flows were already deep within the barriers of the world itself. If the void here was cut apart, one would step out of this world and into the true void. Just a casual swing of the saber without pouring any strength into it actually had such might. Everyone's eyes brightened, including the still terrified Black Wolf. They could already see the scene of the Dragon City Master being dismembered by this broken saber. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.